How many days did he say?
57.
Does that feel like a lot or not many? I don't know.
It feels like a lot. It's a big number. We can't get here fast enough.
It actually doesn't feel like a lot to me. It feels like, what, that's it? 57?
Well, we're only 17 from SEC Media Days. So, like, after the SEC Media Days, that's when I'm like, all right, yeah, football season's right around the corner.
There's usually that lull then in between, and it slows down for another week or two right after that. But it's amazing how different my perspective is with multiple children, where 57 days felt like an eternity. And now it's kind of like, oh, man, 50, that's all I got? 57 days? And we got to start this again? Not that I dread football season, anything like that. It's just, wow, right around like that. It's just going to hit like that. Okay, let's get ready for it. A lot to get to today. No Greg today. We've got Ari Wasserman coming up at 8 o'clock. He'll talk about the article he wrote a couple days ago with Alabama needing to sort of reinvent themselves, go back in time, hop in that DeLorean, hit that portal, not transfer portal, but that wormhole, go back and be in a scary football team. And they need to induce fear into other people that play them on a regular basis, and that mainly should be the number one goal. Dan Hope's going to talk Ohio State at 9 o'clock. Obviously, they get Texas week 1. What's their quarterback situation look like? There's a lot about that roster that we just don't know yet, that we haven't been able to see, haven't really heard a lot about, and we'll talk to Dan about that. Richard Hendrick's going to review the NBA draft last night, and I wanted to talk a little bit about it. We're not going to dial into who helped their front court the most or who's going to improve their defense the most via the draft and what they did. Probably not going to go there. However, there were some interesting things that took place. Janai Broome drafted last night. Not many people expected that. Philadelphia 76ers take Janai Broome out of Auburn. The 35th pick, 79th NBA draft. The Philadelphia 76ers take their first Auburn player since
Charles Barkley.
In
1985? Four.
It's the 7th pick over the last 7 seasons for Bruce Pearl. Just keep that in mind for a second, okay? 7th pick over the last 7 seasons. 36th player ever drafted from Auburn. So if you're wondering what Bruce Pearl's doing and how he's doing it, well, now you know. The guy's unbelievable. I mean, he continues to just put up numbers, continues to do things in the lore of Auburn basketball that, honestly, I don't know another way to say it, have never been done, that we've never seen take place before.
And he says that, this is coming from Charles Barkley himself. He says Janai Broome is the best Auburn player.
It's very nice of him.
Right.
It's very nice.
And that's what I was going to ask you.
No.
You're taking Chuck?
Mm-hmm. He's in the Hall of Fame.
That is true.
Stop.
Right.
I know what he's doing. I get it, and I appreciate Charles for that.
But let's be real.
Now, he may – I think if Charles really wanted people to sort of buy into completely what he's saying, if he would have said – what's the quote? Do you have it? Because context is key here. If he's going down the line of the best Auburn career, I think you could maybe make that argument. As a basketball player, I think he accomplished more maybe at Auburn than Charles did. So I don't know if I would there's different ways to look at this. It can be what you did in college, what you did in all of your basketball life. Janai Broome is the greatest basketball player in Auburn history. He's taken the throne. See, I wouldn't allow that, but it's Charles saying it, so it's kind of tough to argue with.
Right.
It's him. But no. Now, if we wanted to say who had the best career as a basketball player at Auburn, I think Janai Broome's in that discussion.
Yes.
You can make that argument. You can have that conversation. But, yeah, I don't think we could really go there just as far as he's the best basketball player to ever play at Auburn. To me, that's a little bit different there. So, but it's pretty cool to see kind of how Janai Broome has come in, and there's a lot of people that don't even remember or reference the fact that he's a transfer. He doesn't feel like a guy that he doesn't feel like a mercenary, a guy who just came in and, all of a sudden He just did a couple of things on the basketball court and he moved on. I mean, you put the College World or you put the NCAA regional on and he's sitting right there behind home plate. So I think there's a lot of folks that view him as just an Auburn guy and sort of an Auburn man, which I think is pretty cool. But it's something that hadn't been done a whole lot. Bruce Pearl continues to do things and be just historic at Auburn with the things that he accomplishes. But one thing that stuck out to me last night were the amount of seniors that were taken in round 2 of the NBA draft. Are we going to see a carryover from this in football? Some might say we already have with what's been taking place. Now, the first round didn't have this at all. But 19 seniors were drafted on day 2 in the NBA draft. That's the most since 2004.
So it's been a while.
Been a while since we've seen that many older players be drafted at all. And I think we've seen this trend begin in the NFL. I think we've seen it more of guys just sticking around that had a chance to leave in college football. It's never going to open the floodgates back into college where guys just don't leave to go to the NFL. There's a lot of guys that don't like school. There's a lot of guys that don't like what comes with being a college football player. A lot of guys not making near as much as they would in the NBA, even though NIL is real and nice, and they're just going to go ahead and move on. Like the whole Cooper Flag discussion of, well, he got $11 million in NIL this year. He might could no. The dude's guaranteed to make over $50 million. Like it's goodbye. He's going to move on. That's it. Speaking of Duke, by the way, 8th-time Duke has had 5 or more players taken in a single draft. The only other school that's had multiple drafts with 5 or more players taken in a single draft, anyone?
Kentucky.
Correct, with 3. Duke's done it 8 times. Kentucky's done it 3 times. So Duke's still getting it done from an NBA draft perspective. 13 players selected from the SEC in this NBA draft. That ties the most by the SEC in a single 2-round draft. Also the most by any conference it ties for any 2-round draft. But I am interested in your thoughts on, is this going to carry over to college football? To what extent will we see this carry over to college football? Because I think we believe it's taking place. I think we believe that this is happening. But is it going to continue to grow even more? Now, you look at a situation I think that comes to mind first is Cam Ward, Carson Beck, last 2 years. Both guys could have left, gone to the NFL, see what happened. They played quarterback, so they probably have the best chance to move up in a draft than any other position, just with the workouts that you're going to have before, what can happen with that position, the conversations that go with it. We've seen quarterbacks overdrafted more than any other position. I don't think that's debatable. So from that perspective, not just from a quarterback look, but other positions, top to bottom, is this going to become the real trend in college football? I think mainly the reason, like we talked about yesterday with guys like Broom, like Sears, like Grant Nelson, who are not really projected to be longtime NBA starters or stars, that's probably still a reason that you'll get these guys to come back into college basketball and take the NIL money. Where in the NFL, I don't think first off, the rosters are a lot bigger. I don't think the NIL money is the same for a lot of guys. I think basketball players have a chance to make more, and more basketball players are probably per capita making more than college football players. But I also think, too, the lifespan of football players in general, college or NFL, most of those guys' agents are going to get to them and say, you need to go to the NFL. If the money is comparable or projected to be a little bit more, they're going to be pushed to go ahead and leave. But I do think it's going to impact it, and I do think it's here. It's here across all of college sports, not just college basketball. And so I think that's a good thing for college football. If we see guys that come back, give it an extra year or two that, I don't know, would have ended up being a 4th-round pick and maybe a situational player for a couple of years, or a guy that's hanging onto a roster, but he came back and got a very productive season at Tennessee or Georgia or LSU, that's going to be good for him for a while. I mean, remember, Jaden Daniels could have left. People talked about Jaden Daniels leaving LSU. He comes back, wins a Heisman. He's another one. How many people talk about Jaden Daniels played at Arizona State?
They forget.
And I'm not saying never, like people don't, but it's almost blocked out of your mind. Like he's an LSU guy now. So, I mean, it can do a lot for your lore. It can do a lot for your persona. It can do a lot for you for the rest of your life. Now, I mean, if we continue to follow the trend of what we've seen the last probably 5-6 years in the NFL, if he's even close the next 2 years, he'll be the highest paid player in the NFL. Because it's like Mahomes, Burrow, Hurts, like Lamar, he'll be the next one in line because the market will dictate that. And he'll be up, and his team will have a chance to negotiate early, and they'll get it done. And Jaden Daniels in 2 years, if he's even close to what he did last year, he'll be the highest paid player in the NFL. Worked out fairly well, I'd say. And I think most people look at that and say, yeah, that's what you need to do. But there's a lot of other guys that aren't going to be close to that, and it's going to be interesting to see how it changes moving forward. A couple things we want to get to today. There is a coach, we talk about this all the time, with these tampering shenanigans and people throwing out, oh, woe was me, so-and-so was calling, they tampered with him, but they don't tell you who, or they don't tell you how, or he was tampered with and decided not to leave. We kept him. And obviously the new trend is, I'm just going to say this point blank, lying about how much money you were going to get from somewhere else. Like Diego Pavia did not get offered $4.5 million to go play 1 year of football somewhere. Folks, that didn't happen. I don't care who was here, when it was, how it happened. I'll be glad to let you know no football team in America offered him $4.5 million for one season. No. Now, there might be somebody close to him that felt like it was cool to tell him that and he believed them, but not. No. Negative. I saw another number. I can't remember who it was. It was floating around a day or two ago. Somebody got offered $2.5 million to leave. And I was thinking, no, not with 1 year left.
No.
You can't do that anymore.
No.
I told you, we sat down with Eli Drinkwitz this year, and he kind of looked at the numbers, and he said, okay, here's what you're getting $20.5 million. If you take an edge rusher and you give him 1.5, all right, well, that's 84 other guys that you have. So now you're down to $18.5 million, whatever it is, $18 million and $19 million, and you got to pay the other 84 guys. Well, I know my quarterback's getting a lot, and I better spend a decent amount on the backup quarterback so I don't just completely fall off a cliff if he gets hurt, like Missouri did last year. And by the way, none of us thought that was going to happen.
Right.
We didn't think Drew Pine was going to be that bad.
It's a fact.
It was.
It was bad.
So you got to spread that out. Now, what is already happening is the NIL creativity is already showing up. Some of them aren't even being creative. They're just saying, we'll get it.
Like, don't worry about it. We'll handle that.
The kids believe it. It's fine. The NIL Go thing, it's not real right now. I think a lot of schools are trying or attempting to do it right, and then there's some that they're just getting it done. Which who can blame them? Like, let's see how the thing's governed. Can you really go find someone and say, no, that's not market value, or you didn't plug it in? Let's say, man, we forgot. Sorry. And if I'm not mistaken, most of it's on the kid to plug it in and fill all the stuff out. So that gives the school an out, really and truly. So who are you punishing? Are you going to punish the school for something that the kid's supposed to do? I don't know the answer to it. This is my whole point. We don't know how it works. So why would you not go out there and just say, oh, we got $500 for you for the next 2 years? Where from? Somewhere.
We got it.
We got the guys. It's just not lined up right this second. Don't worry about it. You'll get it. But contractually, too, you can sign that now, and you just have to prove that it's fair market value and it's worthwhile, and you'll make it go. So we'll talk about that, a little bit of one coach, not just saying that people are tampering. He's going to tell you who it was. I want to talk some stadiums today. We were going to get to that yesterday that we won't. Also want to have a conversation about, I had an interesting comment from Josh Pate on my podcast this week of he's only interested in seeing the top 6 to 8 teams in the playoff. How the rest are distributed or selected or qualify, he doesn't really care because that's who can win a title. To which my response was, well, then we need to go back and do a study of the teams who are, say, outside the top 8, outside the top 12 beginning in November that could have gone on to win a championship, that maybe would not have gotten in this 12 team or a 16-team playoff that we think could have gone on and won a national championship. A lot of recruiting news that we need to get to. More good news for Alabama. One school is surprising everybody with what they're doing in recruiting right now. We'll talk about that, have some commentary there. If you want to be a part of the show, 800-239-9569. You can always get in on the Higginbotham hotline. You can always text into the show, 205-834-9450. 205-834-9450. Tweet in at Mac and Cube. Watch us live on YouTube every morning. Search Jox 945. And don't ever forget about our friends at Train. Going to be a hot one this weekend. That heat and humidity can be brutal. Don't let it affect your home and family. Keep them comfortable with an affordable Train cooling system. They've been recognized as America's most trusted brand 11 consecutive years, and they're the official cooling partner here at Jox. Find a comfort specialist near you at Train.com. It's hard to stop a Train. I want to have this practice first when we come back. I saw a graphic yesterday.
So it's official?
Doesn't mean it's right. It's just opinions turned into a graphic. But here's what I like about it. Pick any sport out there. College football, NBA, Major League Basketball. If you were to go either conference or entire league, how easy would it be for you? And we intentionally did not prep for this. I wanted this to be a little bit of off the top of the head and first of mind just when you thought about it. Select the best player in that franchise or athletic department or school's history. You guys have been doing something kind of similar to this in the mornings, but I want to dial it down to an entire league and not go top 4, not go top 3, whatever that is. But if you were asked, all right, best player ever for that team, how quickly could you do it? How easy would it be to do? We'll begin the practice next on Mac and Cube in the morning. Ari Wasserman of the On3 Sports Network coming up at 8 a.m. today. He will discuss why he thinks Alabama needs to be scary this year. They need to inject fear into the eyes of their opponents in order to get back to being one of the better teams in college football week in, week out. But I wanted to have this practice next. And you guys can be a part of this. 800-239-9569, 800-239-WJOX. How big of a slam dunk would it be if I asked you who the greatest player in any single NFL franchise's history was? How easy would that be? How difficult might that be? I'm just going to run through it. And one of the reasons this is going to be fun is how Damian will cut off everybody pre-2009. They just don't even count. Actually, I want to see, I'm going to keep track of this, how many of these we actually agree with. Now, here's the thing. I don't want you doing research. I don't want you looking up stats. I want this top of mind. First player comes to mind as the greatest in every franchise's history in the NFL. FanDuel actually put this graphic out. So keep in mind, there's also not an individual putting their name on this.
Right.
Just a corporate entity. All right. So we'll start with the Arizona Cardinals.
Larry Fitzgerald.
Yep. I think the only other one that I may have debated here would have been Kurt Warner. He took him to the Super Bowl. But Fitzgerald did it there for a much longer period of time. So Arizona would be one that we would agree upon. And I think that one would be pretty easy. Atlanta Falcons. The first one that pops into your head. Mine's Deion Sanders.
I was going to say Matt Ryan.
That's who they go with. They go Matt Ryan as the greatest player in franchise history. I would probably go on Julio Jones next.
Right.
But that's one that's like, it's one of the few across the board that I would look at and say, man, there's a good 3-4 that I could debate from, and I don't know if I would clearly know who would stick out as number one.
I'd go Matty Ice. Michael Vick is the most iconic, but he wasn't the best because Matt Ryan won MVP.
Maybe I was going to say most talented, but then I don't even know if you can do that. When you have Deion and you have Julio Jones, you have a couple of other guys, and maybe because Deion played in San Francisco and Dallas, that's I think Washington for like half a year.
And he was also a Baltimore Raven. I do remember that for a couple games.
Yep. All right, so moving on. Speaking of the Ravens, they're next. Baltimore.
Ray Lewis.
That's the easy one for everybody to go to. I went Jonathan Ogden, and there's going to be a couple of these that I'm going to have there that other people wouldn't. But Ray Lewis has got to be in that discussion. And then Ed Reed, I think, has to be in that discussion.
Right.
But for me, it was Ogden. For you, it's Ray Lewis. And I think the majority of the people would go there. I think the majority of people would probably go with Ray Lewis. And then it's kind of it. Shannon Sharp, if his whole career was there, probably could have been there.
True.
But
Lamar's trending that way.
Yeah, he's on. Absolutely. Buffalo Bills. This is going to be great because none of the players that are going to be in the conversation you even watched play. So
I want to say Jim Kelly.
Yeah, that would be one. I would go Bruce Smith, and that's who they go with as well. But I think Jim Kelly, Bruce Smith, maybe a Thurman Thomas would be in your mix there, but not a ton in the last. Yeah. You could say Josh Allen's on his way, but you're not giving. You can't give it to him yet. You just can't.
J.P. Lossman, they didn't give him time.
Yeah, no. An analyst at Oklahoma, by the way.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Carolina Panthers.
Steve Smith.
And see, I think the first one that a lot of people would mention would be Cam Newton. He won an MVP, took him to the Super Bowl, but just there wasn't the longevity. I think it's got to be Steve Smith.
Yes.
I'm not even sure it's close. Is Julius Peppers in the conversation?
Oh, yeah. He's in it. And
I would go Steve Smith.
I'd go Steve Smith. Like, when I think of Carolina Panthers football, Cam modern era, but like when I think of who did it and did it his way, Steve Smith.
It's also not a long tenure compared to some of these other teams. So, I mean, they haven't had time to have all-timers that have put up 8 to 12 years of just incredible football.
Right.
Maybe one of the most difficult. There's going to be 4 or 5 of these that are just almost impossible. Chicago Bears.
The first name that pops in my head is Brian Urlacher.
Yeah, it's Walter Payton.
Dang, forgot about that. Yeah, that's my fault.
Exactly.
That's my
That's
fault.
why this is going to be fun.
Fault.
That's why this is going to be interesting. Urlacher, I do think, is in the discussion. I think Dick Butkus is in the discussion. They got some old timers that deserve to be mentioned there that are part of that conversation. But yeah, it's Walter Payton. So then we move on to one that I think is going to be difficult for different reasons for a lot of folks. It's not for me. The Cincinnati Bengals. This is one that I can't wait to hear from you of who this is going to be. It's Anthony Munoz, by the way. It's really not close.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Who are you going to go with, though, honestly?
You are going to hate my answer, but I was going to go Chad Johnson.
I don't think it's – I think there could be worse answers. I think some people may – I think Boomer Esiason would get some votes. There might be a couple of people that said Ickey Woods here and there. Ocho Cinco's not the worst choice.
Okay. All right. We're good.
I mean, if we went franchise statistical categories like the Bengals all-time leaders,
I think he's got to be one or two, especially receiving.
Well, what was A.J. Green's tenure there? Like, how many years did he play?
Was it 9 years? Because I think he had like a record for most of 1,000. It was him and Mike Evans for a while, and then A.J. Green got
Boomer
hurt.
Esiason doesn't even lead the franchise. Carson Palmer, I bet some people would have voted for.
Yeah.
Ken Anderson has more passing yards than Carson Palmer, or the Boomer Esiason. And Andy Dalton second.
Wow.
Andy Dalton has more touchdown passes than any Bengals quarterback in history. 204. I would not have guessed
Wouldn't have guessed that.
No. All right, your receiving leaders all time. Ocho Cinco in yards by almost 1,000. Touchdowns, he also leads with 66. A.J. Green had 65. Both are going to be passed.
Yeah.
And all the passing records are going to be passed also.
Yeah, buddy.
So
those LSU boys, they got that one.
All right. So Bengals, that's where we would go. Cleveland Browns.
To be honest, I'm going to go Myles Garrett.
Good Lord. I think you can make a case for Joe Thomas, but it's Jim Brown. He's considered by me to be the greatest football player of all time. So it's Jim Brown. But I do think Joe Thomas has an argument. And then I think we really start. Ozzie Newsome was probably up there, but I don't think he's ahead of those two on anybody's list, but does deserve a mention. And, I mean, some people are going to probably give you a Bernie Kosar, but, yeah, there's nobody I don't think close to those two. Here's a fun one. Dallas Cowboys.
Emmitt Smith.
Okay. It's either he, Aikman is in the conversation. I think there's a couple of offensive linemen that could at least enter the conversation, but I don't think they're going ahead of Emmitt. I think that's it. Denver Broncos. It's Elway for me. It's not close.
I was going to say Champ Bailey.
No.
But he had years at
I think
Washington.
It's Elway, man. It's John Elway. Got him a Super Bowl.
Shannon Sharp.
He's in the conversation, I think.
But Elway was, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's that guy. Detroit Lions is not even.
Calvin Johnson.
No, it's not Calvin Johnson.
It's Calvin Johnson.
It's Barry Sanders.
Fair.
Wow.
Fair. They're both Hall of Famers.
I was sitting there expecting you to go up against me and say, this is why Calvin Johnson was better than Barry Sanders, and you actually didn't even know who he was.
No.
Wow.
Again.
Yeah, this is why it's interesting and fun.
It is.
This is why it's fun.
I hate I'm so young. I didn't get a chance to see it. But I just know when I think Detroit Lions, and now Jared Goff is going to be entering that conversation here soon, but Calvin Johnson is the first person. But yes.
I thought you were going to say Penei Sewell is going to be that name you start thinking about, but okay. This is one that's kind of tough because of a few guys from way back, but the Green Bay Packers.
You're not going to agree, but I'm going to say Aaron Rodgers.
I'm not going to disagree. I mean, I think I probably just first of mind off the top of my head, I would have said Bart Starr. But I would ask this honestly. How different were the careers of, I'd like to see the numbers side by side, Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers.
I take the 4 MVPs into an account, too.
As you should.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fair. I just want to know how different the numbers were.
I think Aaron Rodgers has fewer interceptions.
Well, style of play.
True.
just a little bit different there.
Different. Well, only got 1 Super Bowl.
In Packers history, Brett Favre, 61,655 passing yards. Rodgers, 59,055.
Couldn't stay healthy.
475 touchdowns to 442. Rodgers has the advantage there.
Wow. Yep. I didn't think it was that big.
Well,
I didn't think it was that big of a gap. But also different eras.
The eras changed a lot.
Ground and pound.
So, Rodgers get 2 Super Bowls with Green Bay?
Did he play in 2?
I know he beat Pittsburgh. I was at that one.
Right. I think that's his only one.
I know Favre only got 1.
Right.
Lost to Denver, beat New England.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think Green Bay. I think he only has 1.
So
but has he been it?
If that's the case, then why is it the gap considered to be so big? Yeah, he's Super Bowl champion 1 time, 4-time MVP. I mean, it doesn't feel like the gap should be that big, but for a lot of people, it would be like, oh, Aaron Rodgers not even close. Okay. Now you could say who they were doing it with.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers. He had Greg Jennings.
The weaponry was, again, Sterling Sharp just went in the Hall of Fame. Favre caught him on the tail end of his career and had some good running backs, had some other good tight ends. So just
supporting cast is a little bit different.
All right, Houston Texans.
J.J. Watt.
How close is Stroud already to taking that?
What does he really have
to do to take it? Andre Johnson's in that discussion. Like, what does C.J. Stroud really have to do to be that?
Just keep winning.
Just keep being above 500?
Right. Yeah, essentially.
The Indianapolis Colts.
Peyton Manning.
You could go, does Johnny Unitas go Baltimore or Indianapolis? I don't know. I think it's still Peyton Manning.
Yeah, it's Peyton.
Here's a fun one for you. All right, so that was our 3rd that we have agreed upon. Only the 3rd so far. Here's a fun one for you. The Jacksonville Jaguars.
Fred Taylor.
It's Fred Taylor or Tony Baselli, and I don't think there's. Yeah, I think that's it.
About it.
It is amazing the lack of star power that franchise has had. Mark Brunell was good there for a few years. Keenan McCardle was good there, but we're talking best ever. Like I'm talking who are pretty good. Like, who's the best defensive player in Jacksonville Jaguar history?
You can call it recency bias, but I would say Jalen Ramsey. He's probably the only. Yes, him and Miles Jack are probably the only 2 defensive players I could name that I know played for Jacksonville.
That's part of.
Right, and they only been a franchise since what 90.
It hasn't been
99?
A long time. I get that, and I understand that. But just that doesn't really matter a lot of times because you still at least have some guys that are just a little more memorable than what they've had. And one thing that I never hear people say is like, how much does that assist? I would disagree with this. But how much does that assist in how people view Fred Taylor? Because a lot of other places people would say, well, they didn't have anybody else or they haven't had anybody else. I'm just asking. And it doesn't feel like they have a lot of guys who are kind of in line to be next up.
Well, they're paying Trevor Lawrence like he is.
Well, they don't really have a choice.
It's the market.
Yeah, you kind of have to. Yeah. All right, career leaders in – let's get some defensive numbers here for the Jags. No, that can't be right. All-time leader in interceptions is 15, Aaron Beasley.
Okay, AB.
Oh, I'm sorry, 30, Rashawn Mathis.
Okay.
Immediately at the top of the list.
Hey, we left him out. Dang.
All-time leader in tackles, Paul Posluszny. You probably don't remember him. Played at Penn State.
Penn State, yeah.
Yeah. He's a good player.
That's it.
How many sacks do you think? Well, actually, Tony Brackens was really good for a few years. He didn't have a lengthy career, but he was pretty good. John Henderson, Calais Campbell, probably guys we should have mentioned. But they're 5th and 6th all-time in franchise history in sacks.
And Calais Campbell wasn't there that.
How about Josh Allen already has 53?
Okay.
So he has when he gets, and he will, his 3rd sack of the season, he'll be the franchise's all-time leader.
Are you serious?
No one talks about him.
Wow.
First off, like one of the best human beings you'll ever meet. So that not that changes this conversation, but Josh Allen out of Kentucky is going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars all-time sack leader in about week 4 this year. Kevin Hardy was really good. Marcus Stroud was really good, but you don't have a lot of those where you're just like, oh yeah,
right.
That's the guy. Even when you're just talking about side of the football, crazy. All right, we'll continue this practice next. Mac and Cube in the morning. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. No Greg today. You have the option to be a part of this conversation. You can tweet in at Mac and Cube. You can also call in 800-239-9569. Be a part of the show there. You can text in 205-834-9450. A couple of you already chiming in. Tommy Hood says, got to go Favre over Rodgers because two of those MVPs should have belonged to the guy you'll name when you get to New Orleans.
But they didn't.
Russell Terry goes, well, D'Amico Ryans for the Texans?
Okay.
In different ways, yes. I can see where he easily, he gets them deep in the playoffs. He's probably that guy immediately. Because he's a top 5 player in franchise history, I think, on the field, no doubt. Russell Terry also tweets in, Bears got to be Peyton, but Steve McMichael deserves a mention. He's one of the all-time greats, but Bears got a lot of guys that deserve a mention. And for a lot of reasons on the field. All right, when we go through a couple of these other ones and we look at different teams that we asked the question earlier, just how easy would it be for you to name the best player in an NFL franchise's history? Just off the top of your head, no prep, no stats, not looking at things. Now, we've looked into a couple of guys as this has been going on. And we have only agreed on Arizona, Carolina, Dallas, and Indianapolis. Which I would like to have this practice again and say, if you were starting a franchise and you could draft one player from that team's history, how many of these would be the same?
Yeah.
Are you drafting Favre or Rodgers?
Rodgers.
Or Reggie White? Because he played a portion of his career in Green Bay.
And Philly. Yeah.
So it can be, we'll get to both of those. We'll see. We exited with Jacksonville, which we also found out today that after his 3rd sack this upcoming season, Josh Hines-Allen will be the franchise leader in sacks. Already leads in tackles for loss, by the way. This is a fun one for you. This one's right up your alley. The Kansas City Chiefs.
Believe it or not, he's
a quarterback gets you 3 Super Bowls. He's
right. Like I was going to say Patrick Mahomes.
But I'm going to say that there are 2 guys here that deserve a mention that probably most people would not. A lot of people would not. Derek Thomas is one of them, yes. And Will Shields is another.
Will Shields.
He's a Hall of Famer. So one of the best interior offensive linemen in NFL history. They deserve a mention is all I'm saying.
Right.
And, honestly, you have to I do think you have to say Kelsey deserves a mention.
Yeah.
He's a top 10 tight end in NFL history, maybe top 5. It's just that his quarterback is maybe a top 5 quarterback in NFL history. So, but it's Patrick Mahomes right now. His quarterback got multiple Super Bowls. You can't really go against that. Here's a weird one. Let me first ask you this question because I was there. I do card breaks at different points in times for pizza pools, and like we have to talk about different teams. And I was watching another guy do it, and he opened something and he saw the Raiders, and he was like, "The Raiders were in blank. What cities have the Raiders been in?"
Los Angeles, Oakland, and Las Vegas.
Okay. This guy did not know that the Raiders had been in L.A. Like,
I knew that before the 30-30.
You just skipped all of NWA and Ice Cube. And
right.
Didn't listen to any of that, did you? Okay.
See, I knew that before the 30.
And we'll also say this. Gentleman was not Caucasian, which really took me by surprise. Not that matters, but just.
Yeah. Kind of throws you off.
You feel like there may have been more indicators there growing up than the other way. Either way, was surprised. Okay, so Raiders. Tough one because, one, they have had multiple instances of greatness in that franchise's history. Now, recently, maybe not ever as great, but did have a couple Super Bowl runs and have had great players. I would say, if I were describing the Raiders to someone, I would say that from a team perspective, they have some of the greatest short runs in NFL history and some of the, similar to individual players, some of the greatest shorter runs of NFL history. Like, not a lot of guys have been Raider lifers after 1985. Like, guys you have Art Shell, who deserves to be in that conversation. Obviously, Kenny Stabler deserves to be in that conversation. But then you've had some of these unbelievable players for a couple of years, I feel like. Me, personally, the first one that popped into my head was Tim Brown.
Okay.
because Tim Brown went to the NFL and was an amazing. Tim Brown, I think, could have probably made the Hall of Fame as a kick returner, and then obviously was a Hall of Fame receiver. Bo Jackson's the one that you want to be there, but I don't think the duration is going to allow him to be the greatest player in franchise history. I'm interested where you would go here.
Charles Woodson. But I didn't know if – see, my thing was –
honestly, how many years did he play there? 2?
He was there longer. He was there longer than he was at Green Bay Packer. And that's why I looked up. And I was like, okay, well, the first one that pops in my head is Charles Woodson. But I didn't know as I was watching it as I was younger, I was like, man, he a dude. Like, he's a dog. But then I was like, okay, yeah, I know he played for the Raiders.
98 to 05.
Yeah.
And 06 to 12 for Green Bay. And then back to the Raiders again. Okay. I think most people would have gotten that wrong. If you say, where did he play longer, Raiders or Packers? They would have said Packers. I think I would have. That's a great choice.
Yeah. He just had more success when he was a Packer. Or at least you saw him. You saw him a lot more.
I think he was more forward-facing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But was on some good Raider teams, no doubt.
Tucker Rule was invented because of him.
Yeah. San Diego Chargers.
LaDainian Tomlinson.
Rivers deserves to be in the conversation, though. I mean, just because they did not get a round or two deeper in the playoffs, when you look at the other quarterbacks he was going up against, is very understandable. Also, Junior Seau deserves to be mentioned.
Yes.
I mean, he deserves to be in that conversation. Because there have been some other guys that I think have been close over time. Like Stan Humphries was great there, got him to a Super Bowl, but he's not in this conversation. Like Natron Means, great, not in this conversation. But those two, they absolutely deserve to be there. Here's one for you now. Do they have a player right now that you think could take that throne? Maybe not from LT.
No.
And it's not Justin Herbert. It's Joe Alt.
Oh, you think? Okay.
I think he can be that good.
Okay.
The Los Angeles / St. Louis Rams.
Marshall Faulk.
You sure?
Either him or Torrey Holt.
You sure?
That's who I would go with.
You want to think about it a little more? First off, it's not going to be, but Orlando Pace deserves to be mentioned, and that's not where I was going.
Okay. But Marshall Faulk is the first the first thing that popped in.
There has been a player in your lifetime who has been the greatest at his position.
Aaron Donald.
Yes.
Fair.
Forget about him. I don't know why. I don't know why we forget about him. I mean, you could make an argument that he has been the most dominant interior defensive lineman in the history of the National Football League.
Yeah.
And we just –
that is, yes.
Some other receiver that played there. Throw him to the side.
Like Torrey Holt was out there breaking fingers still out here, having a Hall of Fame career. Not to say Aaron Donald.
Aaron Donald's breaking face masks. All right, well, we got a couple more to go. We'll finish them up next. Mac and Cube in the morning. All right, we got a couple others chiming in on different franchises, who it should be, who it might be, who you would go with. We were just having the practice because FanDuel released a graphic yesterday of best player in NFL franchise history for each team. And I didn't want to do research and come up with numbers. I just wanted first of mind, top of mind for you personally, so there's no right or wrong, who you believe the best player in each NFL franchise is. So we've kind of been going through the list. We have not agreed on many. I think 4 teams. Arizona, Carolina, Dallas, Indianapolis would be the only team so far that Damien and I have agreed with, which is part of what makes this fun because different times, different eras, obviously guys are going to see things in a different way. I would agree with you on Tomlinson, though. I would have gone Aaron Donald for the Rams. Marshall Faulk is right there in that conversation. Could easily see him being number 1, would have no problem with it. I think another one that's going to be pretty easy is going to be the Miami Dolphins.
Dan Marino.
Yeah, it's not close. I mean, Dwight Stevenson, amazing career. You could say Tua might be on his way. Mark Duper was an amazing receiver, but I don't really think anybody even comes close to Dan Marino in this conversation. Jason Taylor was great for a while, but it's Dan Marino. An intriguing one that I think is probably easy for some, the Minnesota Vikings.
Randy Moss.
I don't know how you go another direction. Like John Randall was awesome on defense, but no, he's not Randy Moss. No. I mean, I just
Chris Carter was opposite Randy Moss, and
it's Randy Moss.
It's Randy Moss, though.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the more easy ones that you're going to go with. There are some other guys a little bit back in the day, Hall of Famers, but it's Moss. The New England Patriots.
Let
me write that down. That's the 5th one we've agreed on.
Thomas Brady.
I'm trying to think who would even be next. Like Andre Tippett would be in the conversation if you're talking about who's next, not over Brady.
Not right.
Who's next?
Yeah.
I mean, is Moss in that conversation?
His stint was short, but it was impactful.
Like I think Kevin Falk's one of the more underrated players in Patriot history, but I don't think he's in the conversation of being the best Patriot ever.
Right. Teddy Bruschi.
No, it's still
Brady.
Yeah, it's not. But I don't even know. I mean, yeah, if you're talking who's up next, possibly like John Hanna might be in that conversation. But I mean, it's Brady might have the biggest gap. Brady and Marino so far, I would say biggest gap of any team we've discussed.
Yes.
Because Carolina, we even debated Steve Smith, Cam Newton. Arizona, you could throw Kurt Warner in there and have a real conversation about it. So yeah, Saints.
Drew Brees.
I'll go Roman Harper just to be nice.
That's very kind of you.
Giants.
Lawrence Taylor.
You don't have to say Eli Manning because it's LT. And I think that gap is about as close as Moss and Marino's.
Thank you.
Jets. It can't be a guy that has more interceptions than touchdowns. It can't. Revis?
That would be one.
Eagles. It's Reggie White. Steelers. It's one of the more difficult ones. A lot of directions you could go there. All right, Ari Wasserman joins us next. We'll finish that list up next hour as well. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. We'll table the greatest player in individual NFL franchise history for a few moments. Want to talk some college football now. Good news for Alabama, by the way, yesterday. 4-star tight end Max Suter commits 6'6", 225 out of Dunlap, Illinois. I mean, some of these kids that Alabama has been getting flips from and getting commitments from, it's intriguing, the geographic locations, but still winning at home as well, as 4-star running back E.J. Crowell commits 6', 215 out of Jackson, Alabama. So a nice commit there for the Crimson Tide, trying to get back to what they were a couple of years ago. And Ari Wasserman of the On3 Sports Network, you can see and hear his podcast at the On3 Sports Network with Andy Staples. It's great work. They do an amazing job of being a little bit more scary, a little bit more intimidating, Ari, in which you wrote a little earlier this week that you believe should be the primary goal for Kalen DeBoer and his staff is getting Alabama back to being scary. And we had a conversation about it earlier in the week. I think part of the problem here, and I want to get your thoughts on it, is that maybe what you, a lot of people similar to our age view as being scary might not really truly be accomplishable in today's college football because of depth and collecting talent on rosters. We kind of view that as a bludgeoning, can't do anything about it physically style of ball. Can any team get back to kind of what our perception is of being a scary college football team?
Cole, did I lose you?
I've got you now. I can hear you.
Oh, okay. I think you cut out there. Sorry about that. Yeah, that's a good question. Now, the thing that I think is interesting is Alabama should still be able to scare Vanderbilt. Right. Like, even though, like, we're in a position where teams that are like Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, the top of the top, cream of the crop, won't be able to stack talent and depth to the same degree that they've used to in the past. The top 30 players on Alabama's roster should still scare Vanderbilt. They should still scare Florida State, or the current Florida State, you know. And I think that the interesting thing about the column is not necessarily just the notion of scary, but getting Alabama back to a place where people think twice before they open their mouth, you know. And I know that, you know, Nick Saban being gone is a big part of that, and there's nothing that Kalen DeBoer could do about that. But at the same time, they didn't scare anybody last year. I don't think they're scaring people coming into this year. And I don't know that they're still not one of the top 3 or 4 most talented teams in the country. So he has an opportunity, Kalen DeBoer, that is, to, you know, get Alabama back to a place where, you know, respect is earned again. And isn't it interesting, Cole, when you think about, like, Nick Saban's life work and, you know, what he built at Bama? He got it to a point where arguing who the best wasn't even fun anymore. He got it to the point where Alabama was so unequivocally head and shoulders above everybody else that, like, it was universally accepted in the college football community. You know how hard it is to get everybody to accept something in college football? And then, like, a year after he's gone, like, it's vanished. Like, it's like that is what you need to try to restore. And I don't know if that's an irrational ask, but obviously that comes down to winning. And you know how you do it? By grinding Vanderbilt into the dirt when you play. When you play Florida State in week 1, you know, remind them who's boss. You know, and I think that you do that little by little, and then eventually you get to a point where you earn the respect back and then the fear comes.
So I think it's all accurate, what you said, and it's an intriguing thought when you take what I said and you kind of put that with what you said. What can Kalen DeBoer do? If the talent is a little bit further there, which most of us would agree, I think there are probably more teams that are either closer, equal to, or ahead of Alabama than there have been in, I don't know, 8 years, 12 years, potentially.
Maybe 15, yeah. It's been a while.
So what is it style of play? Is it just overall physicality? Is it like what can he do to get part of that back with what he has? Let's remove just adding extra talent.
Yeah, well, here's the thing too, because it is interesting that Alabama isn't as talented from top to bottom that they were in 2020, and most teams or every other team isn't either. But all the other teams that they're playing are going to actually have a little bit more because that's where their talent that they would have otherwise had is. But what I think that he could do is he could run up the score. I think what he could do is put Alabama in a position where they're winning a bunch of big games. And I think that sounds simplistic, and maybe it is, but the art of winning is the biggest thing. Now here's the biggest challenge to me, is when you look across the board at Alabama's roster and their team, you feel pretty good about everybody, right? You feel good about the receivers. You feel good about the running backs. I don't need to go down the list. It's Alabama. But the one thing that I think people are unsure of when it comes to them this year is the quarterback position. So what he and Ryan Grubb need to do is nail that. And I don't know, it looks like it's going to be Ty Simpson, but if you nail the quarterback and that guy comes out firing, whoever it is, and they look like a peak version of themselves, or at least a team that could conceivably win the national title this year, and they get back to that playing field, then I think some of the order will be restored. I think that, like, what Nick Saban built and was lost that I referred to earlier was lost as a result of missing the playoff last year, not 100% because Nick Saban is gone. And I think that they can restore some of the order by proving that they're one of the best teams in college football. I don't know that it necessarily means they've got to beat everybody 55-0, but I think you want to get Alabama back to a place where the other team is beaten when they got off the bus. And I don't know that those days are gone. They might be gone when they're playing South Carolina or Tennessee or other teams that are still, like, physically talented and built, semi-similarly. But when you think about the two teams that were talking trash to Bama in the last month, like, those two teams should be scared.
Right. Ari Wasserman of the On3 Sports Network joining us on the Higginbotham Hotline. So we rolled that into a little bit of a different conversation as far as it pertains to rosters in college football and being scary. How many are, in your opinion? Like, how many right now, when you think other teams look at just their guys, look at it and say, there's just not going to be a lot we can do about that? Because Greg and I thought it's once we went through the practice, Ari, I felt like it was much smaller than a lot of people would have assumed.
Well, my number would be 3 or 4. What was your number?
Probably around there. Yeah. And I think you could go back 6 years, 8 years, maybe even 4 years, and probably have a lot more than that.
You think? The thing that is interesting to me is that, like, if you went back to 2020, picking who would win the national championship at this point in the year was as simple as looking at one chart. There were 6 teams on that chart, and if you would bet your life that one of those 6 teams would win it, and then infallibly, they would. And the thing that I think is interesting is that based on this metric of winning off the bus, is probably done so as a result of how much talent you accumulate. And there have been only 3 teams between the years 2000 and 2022, I think, that won a national title having not signed a top 5 class in any of the previous 4 years, and that was the Auburn, Cam Newton team, and 2 Clemson teams with Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson, and all 3 of those teams signed top 10 classes during those years. So, like, that was what made it, from that regard, when the talent hoarding was at an all-time high, you would think that would actually be a smaller number because the players are concentrated in different teams and, weren't very shared. Now, like, Dylan Stewart is on South Carolina and Colin Simmons is at Texas, and you can go down the list of, like, insanely talented players that are more spread out. But I think in terms of the teams that would be scary, I think that you would still probably land at Georgia. You would still probably think of Ohio State. I think a team like Oregon might end up being that, and certainly Texas. So, and maybe even Penn State this year. So maybe 5. But Penn State, I think being scary is a combination of physical attributes and results, sure, but also the psychological aspect of it. Like, Penn State might be physically scary, but I'm not necessarily sure that people fear them because they've come up short pretty often against other high quality opponents. So,
well, I think it got fewer and more difficult when we just went defense too, because I think Greg and I were thinking about some of the LSU defenses, Georgia defenses, and Alabama defenses, and Ohio State defenses that were just guys that there was nothing you could do about. Literally just take over guys all over the place. And we started rolling that around, and we kind of came up with Texas, maybe Clemson. Like, people are going to throw Georgia in there just to throw Georgia in there, but with what's proven commodities,
sure.
I don't think they are.
Yeah, like the types of teams that had more than one Joey Bosa on it.
Yeah,
exactly. Those types of teams. And I don't know I think Dylan Stewart falls into that category, and I think Ant Hill falls under that. Colin Simmons falls into that category. But Texas might have 2 or 3 on their defense. So I think Texas for sure. Ohio State has 1 on defense and 1 on offense. They've got the 2 best players in college football, both on each side of the ball. So they're probably in there somewhere. But even then, when you talk about proven assets that you know for 100% fact are going to be first-round picks next year, Ohio State lost a lot of players last year. So maybe they don't. I don't know. But I think the concept of scary, to me, in my mind, is also another way of saying respect. I think that Alabama has to earn its respect back. They have to make people think twice when they open their mouth, or even put people in a position where they're not confident to do it. Because it was pointless. One person that I can remember did it in the entire Nick Saban era, and he was feeling himself after a game in a post-game interview, and made a quick jab, and then they lost 59-0. And then that didn't happen again. So. I think being scary, to go back to the original point, Cole, is picking the right quarterback, winning the games you're supposed to, winning the ones comfortably against the ones that open their mouth, and showing the world that Alabama isn't a thing of the past. And that, to me, that is a goal that spans across talent accumulation, position battle decisions, and then, of course, results in games.
Ari Wasserman of the On3 Sports Network with us in the Higginbotham Hotline. You brought up 2020 a moment ago in referencing sort of where your chart was on potential national championship winners. How big would that chart be going into this year for you right now?
Yeah, I mean, we used to say 6 to be nice, and it was probably more like 3 or 4. And it was every single year very easy to pick the national champion before the season started. That's how lopsided the rosters were. And when people used to get mad at me for saying stars matter all the time, they never acknowledged it, during that time period. And then when Michigan won the national championship, that was the first time in my entire career in adult life where there was an exception to that rule. And they were playing a team that also would have been an exception. And then that was kind of the beginning of the transfer era. And now you have to think well, maybe there's 15 teams this year that could win the national title, which is a huge departure from what it used to be. And I don't know if 10 more years of data will find that it actually wasn't that way and we're just overthinking it. But the way that Notre Dame played down the stretch last year, they wouldn't have made the litmus test from a talent perspective preseason to make it that far. Penn State was a quarter away from doing it as well. You have teams like that were always very good. The 10-2 teams that were always 5, 6, 7, 8 in the 4-team era, that had no shot of competing at all for a national title are now going to get in. And now that the superstar, super talent teams are far less deep, then maybe Penn State has a chance to beat Alabama at the end of the year. Maybe Notre Dame has a chance to beat this year's Ohio State. I think last year's Ohio State was the last remaining super team that we're going to see for a long time. And, I don't know. We'll see, maybe 2026 Oregon will show us something different. But for the time being, I think long-winded answer here, Cole, probably 14, 15. I mean, doing the top 10 this year was very difficult. Yeah. In the past, it was do the top 4, and it's the same 4 teams. Which 4 teams signed top 3 classes each of the last 4 years? Okay, those are your top 3. It doesn't matter who they lost. They still have better players than everybody. And then try to fill in 6 to 10 with some of the usual suspects. But I put Penn State number 1. There's no way I would have ever put Penn State number 1 in 2020. There was no shot. If I'm ranking based on that, I would only rank which teams hoarded talent and which ones didn't. And then the second tier would be the tiers of teams 1 through 6 were so difficult to rank. I mean, so easy to rank. And then teams 7 through 30 were difficult to rank because they were all the same. Now the top 6 is watered down, and in the middle 15 is watered down, and you might end up at 15 teams that might have a shot to do it this year, which I think for the fans probably a feature of this new system, right? More teams have a shot to conceivably win it, more fans engaged, more games at the end of the year, and you kind of feel like the NFL a little bit.
Absolutely. Ari Wasserman of the On3 Sports Network with us on the Higginbotham Hotline. You covered them previously. You don't necessarily just focus on them now, but I am interested because we're going to have more conversation about Ohio State today. Sort of where are you on this team right now? I find myself wanting to like them more than I do, and I just continue to find what I view as potential holes or weaknesses. And actually, it's not just the roster. I don't think anybody's talking about some of the coaching turnover there and how good Chip Kelly was late in the year and what he did and how they sort of reinvented themselves offensively a couple of times and how beneficial that was in the postseason. I'm just interested to get kind of your 1,000-foot view of Ohio State right now.
My 1,000-foot view of Ohio State is that their worst case scenario as a football team is 9-3. Like, no, it doesn't matter who it is. It's like that's true no matter what. Like, you could fast forward to 2034 and that's going to be true. Here's my actual view of Ohio State, having covered them for a decade of my life. The best teams in Ohio State football history have not won the national title. If you go back to 15, 19, 06, some of the teams that they had, 05 even, like, they didn't win it. And now in this new system, winning a national championship is far more complicated and difficult in terms of path than it's ever been before. Not only do you have, I mean, you might be able to afford losing a game or two in the regular season, but the games that you have to win consecutively at the end of the year is more challenging than anything that you ever had to do. So, like, my perspective is like Ohio State's probably not going to win the national title this year. They couldn't do it most years when they were elite of the elite. What makes you think after losing all the players they did last year, the stars aligned, that they're going to do it again? And I think that there are some questions about the quarterback. Those could be, thrown into the trash by the end of the first game of the season when they play Texas. But they definitely are going to be very good. And that's kind of where they are. Their floor is incredibly high, Cole. If you go look at their depth chart, they had some weakness at the offensive line position last year. They're returning a lot of players back. They go in and get one of the best tackle acquisitions that you could possibly get from Rice. Their tight end position, they got Max Clare, somebody who people think is going to be pretty good. And then they really didn't need to hit the transfer portal, though, like Jalen McClain, Jermaine Matthews, Caleb Downs, Igbe Nosen, Lorenzo Styles on defense. Like, all the players that Ohio State has are players that have been in their program. And I think that we've forgotten that there's still 3 or 4 teams out there that still recruit top 5 classes every year and develop players into starters. So, like, I personally think they're going to be in the playoff, no question. I don't know what their path is going to look like or what, it's going to actually end up being. I wouldn't predict national championship because it's hard to win one, let alone 2 in a row. But they're going to be very good, probably a 10 or 11 win team without question. And then what they do in the postseason, I think will just be about matchups and how they're playing at the time. The one thing I will say, Cole, I know when I'm rambling a lot in the show, that they unequivocally have to do this year is find a way to beat Michigan. Like, I think if they go 10-2 and beat Michigan, that's fine. And I think Ohio State fans, that's all they really, really need, because it's been, 5 years since pre-COVID, the last time they beat them. Like, that's insane to think when you think about the talent, the resources, and what Ohio State has on an annual basis for that to even be possible.
Okay, so finish this season for me, or this sentence for me, excuse me. Ohio State, everything you just said about them, the other teams that you would place on the counter with Ohio State currently would be Texas, Clemson, and
Penn State.
And you put the period on that sentence there. That's it.
I have questions about Bama. I have questions about Georgia. If you're saying how do I definitively feel, I'm going based on the teams that I think have the best collection of talent and the best spread. I think Georgia will probably end up being there. But I just have this sneaky suspicion, and I don't know what it is. It's just a gut feeling that one of either Alabama or Georgia is going to be a major disappointment this year. And I put both of them in my playoff projection, but, I don't know what it is. There's just, this feeling that, one of them isn't going to make it. And I don't know which one, and I don't know why. But, I just kind of have this feeling. So, who else am I forgetting, Cole? Am I forgetting somebody?
No, you're not. I give you credit for kind of following it up with, I guess, either parentheses or another sentence in the paragraph of Bama and Georgia. I'm not sure I put them in the same category as I would Clemson right now, as I would Texas right now. Now, we're going to have guys that aren't as good as we think, better than we think. But we've talked about on the show, Ari, how it feels like there's a ton of teams that it's easy to get excited about a player or two, but then we forget to start asking the questions. Like, you brought up South Carolina earlier. I think they are sort of they're the example of a lot of the SEC and a lot of college football this year. Lenore Seller's awesome. Dylan Stewart's great. Like, people forget the supporting cast Dylan Stewart had around him last year. Like, you had an NFL linebacker, 2 NFL safeties, 3 NFL defensive tackles, another NFL defensive end. Like, those guys are gone. And you might be awesome by yourself, but we have a lot better chance of slowing you down than we do 6 other guys down. So, and I just think there's a lot of that with Bama. There's some of that with Georgia. And we've seen the quarterback unknowns with Bama and Georgia before, but there were just so many other concrete, solitary knowns that we don't have this year. So then the quarterback thing has to become even more of a question because, well, you're not throwing to Brock Bowers. All right? You're not handing it off to Derrick Henry. So those other questions are more valid. Well,
here's I'm going to throw one better at you. If you look at the top 25, I'm pulled up my top 25 of my projections, and then my top 3 or 4 are Penn State, Texas, Clemson, and Ohio State. I'm very high on LSU, but they fall into that category. Georgia does. Notre Dame has the best offensive line in college football, and I know you appreciate that more than anybody, Cole. And they have they've got a great running back, and I think that Jaden Greathouse is going to be awesome this year. But Alabama has a few players you're excited about. Oregon has a bunch of players, young players, Dante Moore, DeCorian Moore. Like, they've got dudes that you are excited about. Florida has a player that I'm probably more excited about than anybody in college football, and DJ Lagway. But you go down this list and you have a bunch of teams that have 2 or 3 really exciting players, and like, one of these teams is going to click. You know, you got Dyson and Levitt at Arizona State. You got Stewart and Sellers at South Carolina. Auburn's an exciting team. What if Jackson Arnold figures it out and they've got one of the best receiving corps in the country? That's 15. Texas Tech has a whole new team that they went out and got. What about Oklahoma? Everybody thinks they stink because they stunk last year. But what if their defense is awesome and they have a functional offense this year? That's a problem in the SEC with the most influential pickup in the portal this year in John Mateer. They got Jaden Ott at running back. If their receivers can stay healthy, they're going to be much better than they were last year. Michigan's got the best. Like, I can do this all day. Like, the entire top 25 is teams that have exciting pieces that we're excited to do, and it's like trying to figure out which teams are going to put the whole thing together and which teams are going to have just a collection of exciting players, I think is the hardest thing to wade through in June.
Absolutely. Ari, great stuff, man. Thanks for hanging out. I know it was a little bit long.
Yeah.
Really do appreciate it.
No
Always
problem.
fun talking with you, man. Let's catch up again soon.
I love you, Cole. I appreciate you, man. Take care, and I'll be on anytime you need me, all right?
Sounds good. Ari Wasserman on 3 Sports Network. Go to YouTube, wherever you get your podcast, find he and Andy Staples. They do an amazing job. I've told you before, it's my go-to Sunday morning podcast that I listen to during the season. Should be yours as well. You can get our podcast, by the way, joxfm.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get yours. The Jox app is there available. We're live on YouTube every morning. Tell your home smart speaker to enable the Jox skill. A lot of different ways to listen to us each and every day. And a lot of ways to find not only new vehicles, but a lot of different vehicles at Royal Automotive. It's because they got 4 dealerships at one location. Over 50 years, my friends at Royal have been helping our friends and neighbors experience our car buying should be. Right now, you got financing as low as 0% with approved credit and select models through June 30th. Certain restrictions apply. 4 dealerships, 1 destination, unmatched selection and savings. That's Royal Buick GMC, Royal Volkswagen, Royal Automart, Volvo Cars of Vestavia Hills, all at the corner of I-65 and Highway 31 of Vestavia. From sales to service, the team at Royal can help you find that new ride and keep you rolling. Go to the corner of I-65 and Highway 31 in Vestavia to see what Royal can do for you. Or just go online to royalautomotive.net. Let's go to Chris before we go to break. He wants to talk Alabama and follow up on that conversation we had with Ari Wasserman. Chris, what's on your mind?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I want to discuss, especially with Greg, in the 17-year, I guess, dynasty dominant skid. When did Bama become in this just position of being, I guess, the latter half of the Bill Goldberg-esque college football reign, when technically they still have winning seasons? Even on a bad latter year of the end, teams still want to have their winning season, because you still get NFL number one, your number one NFL drafting, recruiting, blue chip, and All-Americans. Like, it isn't like it's just all of a sudden just some, like I said, Goldberg in his latter years, and usually those matches are stinkers, but the thing is, though, Bama's still constant. So can anyone explain to me when did this juxtaposition start?
Yeah, we'll go to Greg on that one.
Hello?
No Greg today. Well, we'll get his thoughts on that on Monday. We'll follow that up because I don't think the description that you laid out is exactly what a lot of people are saying. But I do think that when you compare the two, some of the concerns are more than fair. We'll do that next on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Let's follow up with the call we had from Chris before we went to break. It is 8:29, Friday, June 27th, McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, referencing that you're going to have to help me with some of the wrestling analogies there. Like, was he saying that Bama is in their late Goldberg era now? Or Goldberg was great. What was he, 157-0, whatever
Right.
it was, and then kind of had to start wrestling for real and like going up against other guys that wouldn't just let him win every match.
So it's like Alabama
And-
WCW or something, or like I'm
And what is the SEC? WWE or WCW?
yeah, like, it's got to be WWE.
That's what I would think. So once I think it's WCW was the Pac-12.
Something like that.
Okay. So when they got gone, and all of a sudden, real competition stepped in,
Yeah.
and a lot of people wouldn't fall for some of the phony stuff. It got tough. I don't know how that correlates to Alabama right now. I mean, obviously there's been some change, but they were dominant for a long time. Now, not only has Alabama changed, but the landscape has changed. So it all depends on comparatively how you're referencing people saying that they've slipped a little bit or things are different or things are not the same. Because I don't know many people that would argue with you that things aren't different and that things don't look the way that they did in 2012 or 2017 or 2020. You've watched them. I've watched them. We've all watched them. You can have your Clemson glasses on and say that everything looks awesome and just the same. I watch them and say, not as many guys as scary. Doesn't mean Deontay Lawson's not a great football player. Doesn't mean that some of these guys that we haven't seen play a ton of football yet won't end up, like I think Quay Russaw is going to be great. Has he played a full season? No. We don't really know 100%. Do I think Parker Brailsford's maybe the best center in the SEC? I do. I don't think he's Ryan Kelly or Dwight Stevenson, but he's a good football player. But we didn't talk often about Nick Saban's teams having good football players.
Right.
How many people needed to be convinced that Nick Saban's football players were really good? The discussion was, are they elite,
Right.
great, or really, really good? That was the discussion. And the surprises came when one of them wasn't. Not how many can we convince ourselves to get to that are. Now, some of that was certain guys played in different games because there were blowouts and we got to see them a little bit and we were like, man, this Tim Williams kid can really get it off the edge. Like, wasn't a regular starter, but when he got his chances, whoo, wow. Some of these young receivers that got in late in games, like Jerry Jeudy looked like he can be pretty good. Even though every ball went to Amari Cooper.
And I think like it goes to the point, even Ari brought up a great point. It's almost the definition of scary. Like you go back to 2020, that offense that Alabama had, they would hang 50 on you as soon as the ball was snapped. Like it's things like that where the whole landscape of college football has changed. Like it has. You don't see the Rolando McClains at linebackers. You see the Deontay Lawsons. Like he's more athletic. Like he goes sideline to sideline. Like it's not that, oh, they're getting off the bus and it's like, oh boy, they got some dogs.
But it was only last year you had Tyler Booker.
Right.
It was only a couple of years ago you had Quinnen Williams. And that's where I think the different guys are more scarce. There's a lot of teams that have a really good receiver.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they might not have Ryan Williams, They might not have Jeremiah Smith, but there are a lot of teams that have a good receiver now. Well, Alabama at one time had 4.
Right.
That were probably better than anybody's. That's different. But at the line of scrimmage, I think, is where you can look at it and say, okay, how much are you separated by everybody else? And maybe everybody else isn't separated either, but that doesn't mean you automatically put Alabama that much further ahead of the pack. So I don't think we're looking at it saying, oh, they've fallen off the map, or they're holding on for dear life at the end of their run here. It's just like Nick Saban actually did multiple times. Certain portions are going to have to be reinvented for a lot of teams. It's like Ari said about Ohio State. That's probably the last super team that we see assembled because now the rules have changed a little bit. And now the mechanisms have changed a little bit as to how you can or should or will be able to operate. We don't really know exactly how it's going to work moving forward. I mean, I just saw a tweet come down where Adidas has signed like 6 high school kids. They're all committed. Like, things are different, man.
Yes.
And it doesn't automatically mean that everyone who's always been good at it is going to be as good at it. That's the key, in my opinion. You might be good at it, but are you going to be as good at it? Ask Texas. Because there was a point in time when they were really good at it, and it's been a minute. Now, I'm not saying the last few Sark's been great. They went to the playoff last year. A lot of people think they're going to win the SEC this year. Think about where Kirby got Georgia. They had been knocking on that door for a decade. A decade. David Pollocks and A.J. Greens and David Greens and Aaron Murray's and Noshawn Marinos and Marcus Stroud's knocking on that door for a long time. And all of a sudden, he helped them make that leap. So they were, to go back to some of the analogies, they were really cool as the Intercontinental champ for a long time. They had tag team champion belts for a long time. The U.S. American champ or whatever it was, the hardcore championship for a long time. But like to get the real strap, it didn't just happen.
Uh-huh.
And we could even look at them right now in the same fashion as Alabama. Like, are they on their, I guess it fits even more there. Are they in their Goldberg phase at the end? Where Vince McMahon's not going to let him win 100 straight. Because that's not the way it works. And they feel like they're a little bit ahead of the curve in recruiting and NIL and whatever they're doing to make it work out. Like Kirby kind of seems to have this new part figured out to an extent. But look at Alabama's recruiting. It looks like it's circling back to being closer to what it was under Saban. So is it that far away? Maybe not. Maybe we go out there this year and Jalen Hale just rips it up. I don't know. I haven't seen him play. Y'all tweet into this show saying he's the next Jalen Waddle. Okay. Y'all can say that. I'm not going to say that because I haven't seen it. You got linebackers lined up, ready to go? You got tackles lined up, ready to go? Because nobody else does. And then you're taking these running backs that could be good. And you're asking me, are they Mark Ingram? Are they Derrick Henry? Are they TJ Yeldon?
Right.
Are they Sean Alexander? I'm going to have a hard time saying yes. So I think the point is just that it's most likely an unfair era that we are comparing it to structurally and then also personally with Nick Saban guiding it into what it was. Because like we talked about with Georgia, Curry was able to do it for a minute, and that feels like it's gone. And is it hard to get back to? Go ask Florida fans. Because they sat back and watched some of the most dominant runs in short periods of time than we've seen in this conference's history.
Uh-huh.
Ask LSU fans. They've had the bodies.
On numerous occasions.
And haven't been there. I mean, 2019 was special, but have you been close to that? It's hard to keep going with where we are right now. Because you got new bodies, new brains, new places, new people leaving, people coming and going. They don't want it as much. They don't need it as much because they got money now. These kids are making, I told you guys that, but I almost fell down when somebody who I know knows told me that the entire Ohio State offensive line is making over $500,000 a year, including the backups. Do they need it as much as they did? If you got $500,000 in your pocket, probably changes the way some guys operate. And that's everywhere. That's not just Alabama. That's not just Auburn. It's not just Ohio State. Some of them know how to work that way. Some of them don't. Back with more next. 8:43, Friday, June 27th, right here on Jox 94.5. Finishing up our conversation on Alabama rosters, where teams are. Damien, what did you hear when Chris called in a little bit earlier as to how he was referencing, I guess, some disrespect that he feels like is being thrown towards Alabama because the expectations are a little bit lower and are not just complete and utter dominance this entire season?
It's probably just still off the Thomas Castellanos and Diego Pavia stuff where they just feel like now people are starting to open their mouths about Alabama when in years past they would never mention anything except the highest of praises. It's like, okay, they're going to compete against them. Like, would you want another opposing quarterback to say, oh, man, yeah, we're nervous. Like, we're terrified of this Alabama team?
No, and I would also kind of warn you, I would say, you have a guy that really will say anything about anyone, does not care.
Right.
I mean, just – and this is nothing against him. Like, I also don't feel like has a – like, Diego Pavia told us that he started watching college football when Manziel was going. And, like, that drew him to college football. And so that's his guy. That's kind of, he's told us that's who he wants to be. That's who he plays like. He models his game after. Smidge less twitch.
Just smidge.
But I also, and this is not pointing a finger, this is not putting him down. I don't think his overall understanding and oversight of college football is super deep. And that's just him personally, how he was brought up, what he was into, what he did. Like, I mean, you're growing up in New Mexico, you're probably not a diehard college football fan.
It's not much. You hadn't seen elite in that state, but you've seen some.
So,
okay, thanks.
You know, I don't think he understands a lot of what college football has been, where it's been, why it's been that. So take that one with a grain of salt. Thomas Castellanos quit on his football team last year in the middle of the season. That's all I need to say. If anyone were like, if someone publicly was running their mouth about me and my show and how great comparatively their show was when they were going to go up against us, and they had quit on their show, and we had heard nothing from them since they had quit on their show, I don't feel like it would be very difficult for me to say, I'll believe it when I see it. I have no fear of what you might be because what you've shown me is not overly scary. Okay? Go be scary, and then we can have a conversation. Like, you're not going to come in here and beat us in the ratings and have a better show and be more informative and be more entertaining when you haven't done it. Okay, you did it in another place. Like, if you say we dominated the New England college football radio scene, cool.
Great.
Come do it down here where I feel like our fans know a little bit more. Our listeners are a little more educated. Our listeners are a little more dialed in as to what college football is, has been, is now, will be, the depth of it, the understanding of it, the passion of it, the traditions, the players, the colors, all of it. So until you do that, we're good. And I understand where we are in the calendar, and that's a big part of it. But there's a lot of this is overstated. Diego Pavia played a great game against Alabama last year. Alabama did not play extremely well. I was in the booth. I was there. I feel like I had a pretty good view of it. There were some running backs and receivers that played extremely well for Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's defense played well. They ran an interception back for a touchdown on what, the third play of the game? They had a lot of things go their way. Now, they made those things go their way. I'm not implying luck. I'm not implying happenstance because, as you guys know, there is no luck in football. I don't believe in that. There also are no should-haves in football. So I am not alluding to the fact that Alabama should have won that game. Alabama did not do what they needed to do. Vanderbilt did. But if somebody wants to go run their mouth, it's okay. It's fine. I don't think it's an implication of where the program is. I don't think it has anything to do with where the program is. Because I think if these guys were playing Green Bay in week 1 or Seattle in week 1, they'd be saying the same stuff.
Yep.
If Diego Pavia was playing the Buffalo Bills week 1, he would be saying the same thing.
1,000%.
Josh who? I don't know their D-line. I hadn't seen them. He'd be saying the same stuff.
Yeah.
So I wonder why we're so concerned about it. I wonder why we let that affect things so much. Like, it's cool. Good. Say it. As I have said before, I don't believe in bulletin board material. And I believe it affects the person saying it, potentially now, 100 times more than it does the other team.
Yeah,
because you know you got to go out there and back it up now. And what's going to be creeping into your brain on the first 3rd and 5 that you throw an incompletion, or on that first zone read on 3rd and 2 when you put it on the ground, and all of a sudden they score and they're up 7, and you've played a minute of football. Things change quick. And you know who they don't change for? The team that you were talking about there. The person saying it is who it changes for. Now, there are some individuals out there that need to do this for themselves. I ran my mouth. I put them on blast. I need to go back it up. And that's how they play well. Good for you. But don't think that because 2 guys have run their mouth this offseason that that's the reason that people are viewing Alabama as being different. That ain't it.
No.
We have video evidence of why it's different. The good news is you have a great coach in there, and you have a great coaching staff in there that maybe can take where Nick Saban on the overall EA Sports rating roster was like a 98 or a 99 every year, and just because this roster is at an 89 or a 92, can still find ways to win games. Might not all be 42-0, or I'm sorry, 24-0, because early on they weren't scoring that many points. But you can still win. We had the conversation with Greg the other day. How many games did Alabama let get away last year that they were in? What games was Alabama not in last year? Because they were in the Vanderbilt game. Now, I can tell you this. The feel was not that they were going to win that game.
Right.
Especially in the building. Watching the sideline, there was not a lot of, we're about to find a way to win this game walking around.
Yeah.
Didn't feel that way.
I'd say Oklahoma.
Didn't feel like, once you tried to leg kick the guy off an interception and you got in your best player's face, I felt like things were not going to go your way.
Downhill from there.
And give them credit. They put a game plan in that had not been seen very often, that they sort of took advantage. Oklahoma, that's one thing that we probably, I know Greg and I did on like Monday, Tuesday that week. There are a lot of people that have, 1, refused to give credit to that offensive staff. 2, recognize how different what they did that day was. But, you know.
I don't know, ball.
We just want narratives to be different. And when people don't think they can beat you, they don't run their mouth, except for that D lineman at Vanderbilt that time that already talked about. When teams think they have a chance to get you, they will talk. Not a lot of people were talking about Spurs Florida teams. Not a lot of people were talking about those early 2000s Miami teams.
Lord, no.
Not a lot of people run their mouth about Saban's Bama teams or Kirby's Georgia teams a few years ago because they didn't think they could get them. But when people think you're gettable, and I think that's kind of the genesis of what Ari is saying, people now look at Alabama as potentially gettable. Well, guess what? Everyone is. Texas's quarterback might not be that great. Texas's D tackles might not be good at all. Their offensive line might not be above average. We don't know. And that's where pretty much everybody is right now. We just don't know. We're used to having known commodities, and now we don't have near as many. More on that conversation next. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Dan Hope is going to, I guess, try to inject some hope into Ohio State fans when we come back. Maybe hope into opposing fans, like Texas fans who are playing Ohio State this year, that it won't be close to what it was last year. But I want his thoughts on the quarterback situation, where it is, the overall roster, how close it may be. You heard Ari Wasserman talking about a couple of the additions that Ohio State's had. And we haven't spent just a ton of time on where realistically are the defending national champions going into this year. So we'll talk about that with Dan when we come back. Richard Hendricks with us at 9:30 to review the NBA draft. SEC dominant there. What does it mean for a couple of guys like Janai Broome, who's going to end up in Philadelphia, potentially getting a roster spot for a while or at all? Richard Hendricks takes us inside of that, and we'll talk about it also. So a busy third hour of the show coming up. Your feedback can still be had, 800-239-9569. Watch us live on YouTube, online, joxfm.com. Download the app in your app store. You can get podcasts, YouTube, all of that there at the Jox app. JOX, look for that in your app store, and you can download us there. Subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe on YouTube as well. Search WJOX945. And we'll continue talking college football with an update on the Ohio State roster and Dan Hope next, right here on Jox 94.5. The Ohio State Buckeyes have been a part of the conversation multiple times today. What will it look like this upcoming season? It'll be interesting to hear from Dan Hope in just a moment on his thoughts of where the roster is, who may be surprising, who may be not what we're expecting, how close can they be. We know your CBD store is going to get you close to optimal health, though, and feeling your best. Largest brick-and-mortar CBD retailer in the world. First company to have USDA-certified organic oil supplements. They got the stamp seal on those products. They're going to meet and achieve a certain set of standards and tests because they've all been signed off on at your CBD store. If it's arthritis or anxiety for you or your pet, skincare, gut health for you or your pet, they have answers. Better night's sleep, they can help you. Better focus throughout the course of the day, taking the edge off in the evenings. Your CBD store has products that can help you with all of these. Visit one of their 3 locations, Highway 280 by Bailey Brothers, 150 by the Cage in Cleveland, Trustful just off 459. Your CBD store where good health hits home. All right, Dan Hope of 11 Warriors joining us now on the Higginbotham Hotline. Dan, where is Ohio State as it pertains to quarterback right now? Confidence level, depth chart, just kind of give us your overview of that room here in the middle of the summer heading towards fall camp.
Yeah, I think, it's been a real battle so far this offseason between Julian Sayin and Lincoln Kienholz. And I think, for much of the spring that Lincoln Kienholz was probably outperforming Julian Sayin, having that extra year of experience, having been at Ohio State, now going into his 3rd year versus Julian Sayin coming into his 2nd year. But I think Julian finished the spring strong, had a really good performance in the spring game. And, he's certainly the guy who, coming out of last year has been tabbed as kind of that next guy at quarterback for Ohio State. You're talking about a 5-star recruit, obviously was, committed to Alabama, went there briefly, then transferred to Ohio State. Ohio State wouldn't have made that move to bring him in, after he had already signed somewhere else if it didn't believe he was the guy who could be the next starter for Ohio State. So, I still think going into preseason camp, Julian Sayin is the guy who's the front runner to be the starting quarterback, probably will be the starting quarterback, but I think he still has to go earn it. I think that Ohio State needs to see a little more consistency from Julian Sayin in those first few weeks of camp than it did this spring. I think if he can deliver on that, then he will be the starter this season, but I think he does still have to go win the job in August.
What would your description of Julian Sayin be? I don't know if you want to go comp or just style. What would you anticipate fans seeing if he is named the Ohio State starter?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a comparison, but, I think this is a guy who has, a great skill set as a passer. I think he's got, that really quick release, strong arm, very good accuracy, the ability, to make all the throws on the field. I think the biggest question for Julian right now is, that first game of the year, you're playing against a really good Texas defensive line. How's he going to handle having the rush coming at him in live action? Because we just haven't seen a lot of that with Julian, and that seemed to be the thing he struggled with the most during spring practices when they had the quarterbacks go live, when he was under that pressure. That seemed to be when things, got a little bit off script for him. I think that, in the spring game, he knew he wasn't going to get hit. He looked great. But I think that's kind of the biggest question right now of Julian Sayin, because he is a little bit undersized for what you want in a quarterback. I mean, you think of, what they had last year in Will Howard, a guy who was, 6'5", really well built. You felt confident in him, being able to run the ball, take some hits, and hold up. I think that's the biggest concern with Julian right now is he a guy that they're going to trust to be able to run the ball? Is he a guy that they're going to trust to be able to take hits? Because, he just doesn't have that big frame that they had with a guy like Will Howard last year. And so, I think when you think about what the offense could be around Julian Sayin, I think it could look more like, a C.J. Stroud offense from a few years ago than maybe what we saw with Will Howard, because I just think that they might be a little bit more hesitant to use Julian Sayin in the running game because of the fact that he doesn't have that big frame. But, he is a guy that if he lives up to his potential, has the potential to be that next elite passer, that next first-round pick kind of prospect out of Ohio State.
What about behind Julian Sayin? Dan Hope of 11 Warriors joining us on the Higginbotham Hotline. That was a position of real strength for Ohio State last year. You had Travion Henderson, who we knew if he stayed healthy was going to be great. And then you go get an absolute hammer that was proven in the SEC in Quinshon Judkins. What will that room look like as of now heading into this season?
I think that there was a lot of positive momentum for that position group coming out of spring. I think C.J. Donaldson, who they brought in from West Virginia, had a really good spring, slimmed down a lot from where he was at WVU, and looked like he was running faster. Still has that, big build where I think, he could probably bring some similar things to what Quinshon Judkins brought to the offense last year. James Peoples out of Texas, sophomore, is a guy that they're really high on, who they think can be, that lead running back this year, or, probably much like we saw last year with Henderson and Judkins, probably a rotation between Peoples and Donaldson taking most of the carries. Bo Jackson, freshman coming in, also a guy who had a really good spring, a guy who I think maybe could add a little bit more of that, home run speed to that backfield, which I think would be probably the biggest thing when I'm comparing Peoples and Donaldson to what they had last year, especially with Travion Henderson. We knew Travion was that guy who anytime he touched the ball was a threat to go the distance or make a big play. I don't know that James Peoples and C.J. Donaldson offer quite that same kind of home run hitting out ability out of the backfield, but I do think that both of them can be really solid backs and give Ohio State a strong 1-2 punch.
Visiting with Dan Hope, talking Ohio State football on the Higginbotham Hotline. I feel like one aspect, because we can go through the rosters and transfer guys and guys that are out going to the draft, it's a little easier to talk about. But I thought Chip Kelly did a great job in multiple points of the season in just altering sort of who they were offensively. And I don't feel like the coaching changes are being talked about really at all. Where are you on just the differences in coaching acumen, coaching styles, and what it might mean for this team this season?
Yeah, well, certainly starting on the offensive side of the ball, Brian Hartline has to prove himself as an offensive coordinator. He's more of improved himself as a wide receivers coach and as a recruiter, but he's never been a lead play caller before. And we saw 2 years ago, Ryan Day came close to handing over play calling duties to Brian Hartline, and then he kind of pulled that back and kept him himself because he didn't yet have that confidence in Brian Hartline to be the guy calling the plays for the offense. So the question now is 2 years later, has Brian Hartline, developed enough as a play caller to now where Ryan Day and Ohio State can have full confidence in him being that guy? All signs so far, based on everything they've said, is they do have that confidence in him. But, you'll see, again, first game's against Texas, so he's going to get thrown right into the fire. First game as an offensive coordinator against one of the best teams in the country. That's going to be an interesting development to watch, especially early in the season. And then you flip it over to the defensive side of the ball, bringing in Matt Patricia. I think he's certainly a guy who's going to bring some new ideas to the table. I think, there's been a lot to like about Matt Patricia so far. I think when he was hired, there was kind of this perception of, he's a guy who might not want to recruit. He might not get along well with players. But so far, there's been no sign of that. He has been, very engaged in what he's doing at Ohio State. Players have had rave reviews about him. He's been very active on the recruiting trail. So there's been a lot of positive signs about Matt Patricia so far. How will his defense translate to the college level is the biggest question, because he hasn't coached at the college level in 2 decades. But, you're talking about a guy who won multiple Super Bowls as a defensive coordinator. I think he's probably going to make that defense more multiple than what we've seen in recent years in terms of mixing up fronts. And I think, with so much turnover, especially on that side of the ball, it's going to be really interesting to see what does that defense look like. We know Caleb Downs is going to be the centerpiece of that defense. We don't necessarily know yet exactly what that defense is going to look like around him.
Is there a guy that's in, freshman, transfer portal guy, not getting enough run, not talked about enough, that you think could really help this football team this fall and probably needs a little more discussion?
It's a good question. I think when you talk about freshmen this year, I don't think there's a Jeremiah Smith this year who's going to come in as a freshman and make that immediate impact. Devin Sanchez was kind of the guy who people had talked about, but I think you look at the cornerback position, Davis and Igmanosin coming back. I think Jermaine Matthews Jr. has a chance to be one of the best corners in the country. I think Devin Sanchez still needs a little bit of time to develop into that role at cornerback. You're looking at probably next year when he really plays that major role in the secondary. I think in terms of transfers, I mean, certainly Max Clare, I think, is an obvious guy. Tight end coming in from Purdue. He could be one of the best tight ends in the country. I think, Ethan Anian was probably going to be one of the most important players on the team. Him coming in from Rice as that new left tackle. They don't really have a whole lot of other options to play left tackle. So I think it's very important that he is able to make a smooth transition from Rice to Ohio State and be a guy that they can rely on to protect the blind side of the quarterback. And then Bo Atkinson from North Carolina, really the one major addition they made in the post-spring transfer window. He's a guy who was a very productive player for the Tar Heels. And I think, that defensive end group is kind of a question of, they have quite a few guys, Kenyatta Jackson Jr., Caden Curry, C.J. Hicks, Logan George, another transfer from Idaho State. They've got like 5 guys that I think are all going to see some playing time there. But can somebody step up and be that difference maker on the edge like they had last year with JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer? I think that's the question right now. Certainly Bo Atkinson's a guy they brought in with the hope and belief that he can be that guy.
Dan, I feel like the schedule, and we've talked about it a couple of times on the show, 2, maybe 3 game schedule. Is there a sneaky game that people need to be paying a little bit more attention to, that need to be focused on, that is not at the front of people's minds, that you think, man, I don't know, I just don't like the matchup, don't feel great about where it is on the schedule, where it's going to be played, anything along those lines?
I think the road trip to Illinois is going to be an interesting game, because I think Illinois, they could be this year's Indiana in the Big Ten, is that team that maybe isn't one of those traditional powerhouses, but could be a college football playoff contender. They've got a lot of returning experience from last year. They've got a really good quarterback in Luke Altmaier. That's kind of the game that I circle. Obviously you're talking about a 3-game schedule. You're talking about Texas, Penn State, Michigan. Those are the 3 games that really stand out on that schedule. If you're looking for that trap game, a game where, someone could trip Ohio State up, that's the game I personally circle, is that road game at Illinois. It's kind of right there in the middle of the season. It's still early enough where, Ohio State might be working out some of the kinks and, kind of in that middle part of the year where, you're kind of still early in the year. You maybe haven't quite hit your full form yet, but you're also maybe starting to get a little bit of wear and tear on the bodies. So I think that would be the game for me, that if you're looking to identify a trap game for Ohio State, I'd go Illinois.
There you go. Dan, great stuff, man. Appreciate the update. A team that we're interested in and wanted to learn a little bit more about as the season approaches. Thanks for hopping on. We'll do it again soon.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. There you go. Dan Hope of 11 Warriors, one of the best when it comes to covering Ohio State and Ohio State football. I don't know where the level of confidence is for a lot of people on Ohio State. I think all the questions are worthwhile. There's reality with them. But there's got to be some positive with that, too. I mean, it's not a team that's just going to go away. It's not a team that's not going to have dudes. They will. It's just proven commodities, similar to what we talked about with Alabama, not as plentiful as they were going into last year. And then when you take guys from other conferences that have proven themselves there, you add them, easy to feel good about that team last year. Not so much this year. Problem is, who else is going to sneak up and get them? Like, who's ready to take that leap, not only in the Big Ten, but on the Ohio State schedule? And that's where I think we have a little bit of an issue, because we look at it and say, oh, yeah, they could fall back a little bit. This could be a little bit different this year. Who's taking the step to jump up and grab them? Like Texas week 1 is going to be tough, man. It's a good football team. I know it's there. I know what they were last year. But I think Texas, if you're talking body for body, guy for guy, probably lean Texas just a little bit. Now, that's one, too, where I could see the offseason mentality for Ohio State being, we're going to prove how down and dirty you want to get. And if that's the mentality going in and you can be that kind of a team, could you give them some fits? It's possible, because we don't know if Texas can be ready for that. I don't know if Texas is ready to take that kind of step yet. I think they want to. I think they're attempting to. Washington ready to do it? A lot of people like what Washington's got this year. A lot of people, I'll tell you this, they got a damn good coaching staff. And they got a couple guys that are a little bit scary. But are they ready to go toe-to-toe with Ohio State and go win that game? Not 100% sure that I'm going to pull the trigger on saying that I feel really good about that one right now. But a team that is at 6-6 last year, probably folks sleeping on them going into this year. mean, there are certain people that say Damon Williams is going to be that guy at quarterback. Like he is absolutely that guy. And they made some nice additions some other places. Okay, if it's not them, at Illinois is going to be tough. Just a tough game. And you're at Wisconsin the next week. Not as tough, but you got Penn State after a week off. It's a tough run there in the middle. Michigan, of course, is going to be a handful. What's Michigan's quarterback situation going to be in November? We don't know. It didn't matter last year. Essentially playing without a quarterback, and you won. Minnesota, UCLA, Rutgers. I don't know, man. It looks like 9-3, worst case scenario. So until somebody else proves it, we will probably give Ohio State a little more benefit of the doubt based on what they did last year, as they deserve, and as other teams deserve. It's just when you look on some of these other teams' schedule, there are more teams that look like they're ready to take that step and be that team. We'll talk about some of those next. So let's take a couple of these other teams we're talking about that may or may not be there in college football, and who else might be able to sneak up on them. We mentioned Ohio State. Yeah, Penn State, tough. They might be one of the standards right now, but a lot of history working against Penn State. And that's where I struggle a lot of times when you're looking at teams and you say, man, I like this part of this team, I like this part of this team, but they just haven't done it. They just haven't gotten over the hump. Is that this team's fault? It's almost like we talk about a team's been so dominant and they're just going to be dominant the next year.
Right.
Well, it's like Saban used to always say, this team hasn't done anything.
Nope.
It puts me in a weird place with Penn State, though, because that feels like most people's primary focus. Well, they can't do it. They've proven that they're going to let you down in that spot. This team has. I mean, I get it. History repeats itself.
Yeah.
Trends are real. And that's why Vegas is Vegas. But I also think different personalities can change teams. Like, I had a conversation with Seth McLaughlin, and he talked about one day in practice how basically he said Ryan Day challenged him to be something that he didn't think they had, that they needed basically an MFer on more of that on the team. And so one day Seth's like, we go over at the inside drill. He's like, I looked at my guys in the huddle. I was like, I'm fighting after this play. And they just kind of looked at him. They run, inside zone for like a gain of 6 or whatever. After the play, he goes up, like squares up on a DB, knocks him down, hits him, like starts throwing punches. The whole defense comes and like they kind of get the best of him because it's like 5-on-1. He goes back to the huddle. He's like, guys, what the hell happened? And they're like, we didn't think you were serious. And he's like, I knew that's it right then. So I knew that's why Ryan Day brought me in and said, we got to be this. We need more of this. So the personality of a team can be altered. Now, can it be completely revamped? I don't know. A lot of that's culture. A lot of that is mindset, and that starts at the top, and that can take years to build, whatever. But I do think here's a very small, minute example of that. Look at how Parker Brailsford played next to Tyler Booker last year compared to how he played the year before at Washington. He was a really good center at Washington. He didn't do a lot, anywhere near the extra stuff he did at Washington that he did last year. And I think it was a direct result of playing next to Booker. He's like, I want to be more like that dude. If that dude can do it, I can do it. It just happens. So if Ohio State's got, I'm just going to say I'm not ready to put Washington there.
It's fair.
Illinois, Penn State, Michigan. And Texas obviously open it up.
Mm-hmm.
They lose 4, there's going to be conversations.
Oh, yeah.
There were conversations in the middle of last year.
On a way to a national championship, there were conversations.
All right, so Texas seems to be sort of the standard bearer right now. Ohio State, of course. At Florida.
I mean, we've seen great teams go down there.
They can. They can. It's also not a great matchup for Texas.
Right.
Because I think Florida can be a clock control, ground and pound football team. And we've talked about it before with some of these offenses that can hit you quick. Even though Sark's not hurry up, no huddle, we got to score 50 to win. I do think he likes to operate the way he wants to operate. And when you begin to be compressed and 1 or 2 of those don't go your way, pressure mounts quickly. And I think that's felt at the play caller perspective. It's felt at the quarterback's perspective. Receivers feel like they got to do more on an individual play. All of a sudden, running backs, instead of taking their 8 yards and finishing forward, they're trying to make a guy miss and spin and go score a touchdown, and that doesn't always end up great. Oklahoma.
New pieces.
But could be a problem. At Kentucky, at State, Vanderbilt, I don't really like the matchup. Vanderbilt gave him some fits last year, but I mean, at Georgia,
they look shell-shocked the first time they played.
A&M.
Rivalry.
All right, so that's Florida, Oklahoma, Georgia, A&M, and then I don't know about Arkansas. So there's 4 there that we think could get them. Ohio State would be 5.
Right.
So even the team that we look at as sort of being at the top of the heap, roster-wise, they might have some issues. They might be a little bit of a problem. Okay, Georgia. We don't think their roster is on par with where it was. We do think that their things are a little bit different. At Tennessee,
history has shown
I'm not quite there yet.
Right. It hadn't shown that game was going to be competitive.
Yeah, if you that's where things get super selective. So if you're going to sit there and tell me, well, Tennessee's got this and this, and Georgia's down here and that. If you're going to tell me that Penn State can't get over the hump and win a couple playoff games, you can't tell me Tennessee's just going to beat Georgia this year.
Right.
You can't do it. Because not only have they haven't really been close in a long time. Now, I'll say this. I think Tennessee's defense can keep them in some games this year. What is the offense going to be? I have no idea. I mean, I know what it's going to look like. but I don't know about the guys running it. And as Greg has said, we've made some fun of, like, there's a lot of people that 5-star tackle coming in is going to run people over. Yeah.
Maul.
Bama can get them.
Yes.
At Auburn, that's a wait and see.
Right. It was close last time in there.
Ole Miss is an interesting one.
Ole Miss got him. They got him last year. And the game last year, the more I kind of look back on it, it was rainy, it was wet, but that was the first time I had seen Ole Miss stand up and say, we welcome the fist fight. Now, defensively is probably the best that Lane Kiffin's had, and that was the first time I saw the offense like, oh, they can really ground this thing out if they really wanted to. It wasn't just, like the powers and things, but Ulysses Bentley ran the ball extremely hard. He made some guys miss. So now it's more, I think the pressure's more on Ole Miss is, can you do that again? Could the game go into fist fight mode, and can you still find a way to do it again?
Let me alter that question. Do you have the guys to be able to do that again?
Right.
Because I would say no. Specifically up front on defense, it's not going to be near what it was a year ago. And so, therefore, you better be more capable offensively. And with what's gone, it doesn't look like that's likely. Doesn't mean they won't be good on offense. So we'll go with another coin flip, maybe. Auburn, maybe. Ole Miss, maybe. Florida, I mean, we know what that game means. Should be more. I think it's a little ahead of a maybe. And then Texas can.
Yeah.
I think Georgia Tech can.
They proved me wrong last year. I did not expect Georgia Tech to basically put Georgia on the brink the entire game.
So we got Bama, Florida, Texas, Georgia Tech, and some maybes for Georgia. Okay, well, they're right in the same neighborhood of everybody else we've been talking about.
Yep.
Okay? Not looking like it's just going to be a bunch of cakewalks and they're just going to figure things out and nobody can give them a battle. Because like Ari said, in going back in reference to Alabama, Nick Saban made it a non-discussion of who the best team was. Not a discussion, which meant when you did this practice with them, you had to have an entire presentation prepared for one team and how they could possibly put up a fight. Now we get to Penn State, Nevada, FIU, Villanova.
Yeah.
Oregon? Definitely can. On the road, so keep in mind, they got to take all those extra roads after they land, according to James Franklin. At UCLA? No.
Doesn't seem like
Northwestern? No.
Oh, Lord, no.
At Iowa?
It'll be an ugly game, but
I think stylistically Iowa can almost has a chance on a given day to make anybody's life miserable. But I would put that in the Auburn Ole Miss category for Georgia. Kind of a maybe, some things have to go their way. At Ohio State, of course. At Michigan State, Nebraska,
doesn't seem ideal.
At Rutgers, here's a fun one. Indiana.
I mean, they're riding some momentum.
Are they ahead of the coin flip status that we gave Ole Miss and Auburn for Georgia?
I don't think so.
So they're in the same neighborhood. So we have two games, Oregon, Ohio State, and maybe two coin flips.
Right.
Iowa and Indiana. All right, well, guess what? If you win one of your coin flips and one of your two can get you games, you're in.
That's a fact.
And then you do what Ohio State did last year. You get hot and win a couple games, and guess what? People look at you and say, wow, you did it. Oregon, Montana State, Oklahoma State, Northwestern, Oregon State. No. At Penn State, we just mentioned it. Those are bus rides, after plane rides.
Oh, boy.
That's the one thing James didn't say in that press conference is, however, when people come here, they have to get off a plane after they flew on a plane and get on a bus and go here for how long?
It's gamesmanship.
Is that not a massive advantage?
It's gamesmanship, man.
Indiana in Eugene. I'm just going to know. Rutgers on the road. By the way, September 27th, listen to this is maybe something we haven't talked about with Oregon. September 13th, they go to Illinois. No, it's Northwestern. September 27th, they go to Pennsylvania. October 18th, they go to New Jersey. And then November the 8th, they go to Iowa.
So a lot of flyer miles.
They're going to get their miles in.
Oh, 1,000%.
They will have access to the Sky Club because the miles will be racked up. And again, today's day and age, I don't think it's as big of a deal. But, I mean, that's multiple time zones.
Yes.
Back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. That can wear you down.
And it's about 12 degrees in November up there, so.
The good news would be Penn State, you're probably getting big noon kickoff.
Yeah.
Indiana, you might. Iowa, possibly. I'd have to go look at the other schedules. But I almost think you want all those to be on Fox.
Yeah.
So you can get the hell out of town. Yeah, it's not gonna be fun getting up to play, but you want to get out of there and get home. You do not want those things to be 7:38 clock kicks.
Wind chill about 13.
USC at Washington, Minnesota. No. USC's got some intrigue this year, but I don't know if they're ready to. I would put them in the Auburn Ole Miss maybe coin flip category. So once again, even Oregon, who has all these real question marks, there's only a couple games that you look at and say, scary.
One more before we go to Richard Hendricks on the other side. What about Clemson?
It's an interesting one, but they are there. And maybe more so than people will talk about because we know out of the gate LSU. Okay? That's tough. Troy at Georgia Tech, and it's actually in the Dodd. I don't think it's in the bins. Syracuse at home, they have been. Here's one where you say Penn State can't do it because they've never done it. You have to then say, well, Syracuse has given Clemson fits forever.
Yes.
At North Carolina, no. Now, at Boston College, October 11th, could be tricky.
Could be.
SMU at home.
Yeah.
Duke at home. I'm interested to see Duke, what they're going to be. I think they could be better than people think. Florida State, no. At Louisville, yes. Furman at South Carolina, of course. So you have at Louisville is a yes. At South Carolina is a yes. LSU is a yes. That's three right out of the gate. Then you can have a conversation about Georgia Tech. You can have a conversation about Syracuse, SMU. And then all of a sudden, BC is a little bit of a maybe. Whoa. Tougher schedule than people think. And that'll be one that if they go 10-2, people will say, against who? And there'll be a bunch of like 8-9 win teams.
Right.
That aren't in the playoffs. And people are like, well, that is not a top 10. That is a more difficult schedule than people are given credit for right now. I believe that. All right, we're a little over, but we'll take a break, come back, talk to Richard Hendricks about this year's NBA draft next on Mac and Cube in the morning. Welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, 9:35, Friday, June 27th, Jox 94.5. Appreciate you tuning in. Don't forget about Game Day Men's Health. If you're feeling on edge, lacking sleep, lacking energy, they want to help you. They have answers. It's easy. Go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com right now. Sign up for the free consultation. You get the free PSA test, the free testosterone test, know exactly where your health is. You want to lose weight? Multiple options there that they can help you with. Peptides in stock now. They can concoct these to what you need, be it anti-aging, sleep, gut health, whatever that is, arthritis. Just want to help you feel better. Locker room environment, good people, holistic approach to health and wellness, minimal upfront cost for the programs that they offer at Game Day Men's Health. Go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com today. Schedule that free consultation. See what they can do for you. Richard Hendricks joining us now on the Higginbotham Hotline to recap the NBA draft. Record draft, tying the most draft picks from any conference in a single two-round draft, and the SEC tying the most that they've had as well, Richard. Were there any big surprises for you, though, from the Southeastern Conference in this draft?
Well, obviously, I think you have to start with, Mark Sears and what he's done at Alabama, being such a decorated player, to not hear his name be called. And a little surprised with a defensive stopper with Jamal Meshack being the last pick in the NBA draft. But he does have, obviously, the defensive-minded pedigree and a strong winning desire, which would be something that would be an attribute to help a team out as he's going to the Memphis Grizzlies. But for Alabama to have such a strong roster going into this season, preseason pick to be at the top of the SEC and get back to a Final Four and not have any draft picks is a little bit surprising to me.
What about Johni Broome? Not where he came off the board, just the fact that he did. And I think you maybe relate to this better than anybody to have this discussion point of his game translating kind of physically where he was towards the end of the season. How did you view it, and how do you view what's next for him in Philadelphia?
Well, I think he got a good situation to be picked 35th overall. I do think that now there's more value in the second round with two-way contracts and opportunities for players to have mobility to go up and down from the G League to the NBA. I think teams actually covet these second-round picks more than they do in years of the past. He's a player who obviously did not have a really good showing at the combine when it comes to his measurables, didn't have a high vertical jump, might not have been as tall as people thought that he is. But this is a really good player who's technically sound, has a good feel for the game, strong body, can rebound in his area. And I think with his experience, he will be able to come into a team and contribute with his skill set off the bat. I think in a year like this, where you have so many players who have elected to remain in college because of NIL opportunities, because they can, quite frankly, make more money, that's what makes it surprising to me that you don't see so many players, as we mentioned, like Mark Sears and Grant Nelson, to not get selected in this year's draft. But Johni Broome is a good player, was hobbled with some injuries last season, but I think he's in a good fit to go to Philly.
All right, so I asked Wimp Sanderson this question yesterday, and I would love to get your thoughts on it. He didn't really have an answer he wanted to throw out for it. When we're talking about guys like Johni Broome, Mark Sears, Grant Nelson, who are very productive college basketball players, and those aren't just the end of the list. It's not just in-state guys. We've seen this all over the place. What is the one equalizer that holds them back from being on an NBA floor for long periods of time? The guys that we see average 18, 22 a game in college against high-level competition. What's the one thing that doesn't allow to continue at the NBA level?
Well, it's a combination of size and athleticism or leaping ability. It's just that simple. I mean, in the NBA, you're talking about 450 jobs in the entire world. And you have to have some unique measurables about yourself to be an NBA first-round talent and to even stick around for multiple years. There's tons of really good college basketball players, and obviously it's a different game. You have different rules in the collegiate game to what you have in the NBA, but you have really good players who are dominant on the collegiate level that don't get the opportunity, and oftentimes it's because maybe they lack the height that is desirable in the NBA or the athleticism. You can look at Drew Timme from Gonzaga, who dominated the game for multiple years in the low post. Undrafted Oscar Tshiebwe from Kentucky in recent years, averaged around 16, 17 boards, National Player of the Year, undrafted. Now we move to Mark Sears, who's a first-team All-American, takes his team to a Final Four, undrafted. On and on. I mean, the list goes on and on of players who have been undrafted players who have been dominant on the collegiate level. It shows you that the NBA is looking for a different quality of athlete. One other thing that I would add to that is age. The older you are, it really hurts you when it comes to being an NBA draft prospect. And that's why I would say that there's zero correlation between being a really good college basketball player and being an NBA draft prospect. Now, that doesn't mean you can't be a good player that can make it to the NBA or make it professionally and make a lot of money. But what they're looking for is going to be potential, size, athleticism, and youth.
We're talking with Richard Hendricks on the Higginbotham Hotline, and it feels like the SEC is sort of taking steps that they need to now, not only on the court with wins, getting in the tournament, deep tournament runs, winning a national title, but in the NBA draft. What does it say, though, that a team like Duke, you still look up and another draft, they're 8th with 5 selections? Does it tell you that was sort of a one-off last year with what they were able to assemble? Or is this going to be Duke basketball for the long haul moving forward in our new college landscape?
I think this is going to be Duke basketball under John Shire. I mean, he's been a really good assistant coach under Coach K, and what he was able to do by recruiting some similar level talent like they've had in this last freshman class, Zion Williamson, Ingram. You have so many of the young players that they come in that are game ready on the collegiate level, but are also top prospects. Jason Tatum, another one to come right in and be a really good player on college level and then go to the pros and be impactful. They've done a really good job of getting the guys who are the top guys, getting them to sacrifice and play with each other and allowing them to still be marketable and also be enticing on the NBA level, which is a very difficult thing to do. It's one thing to be a really good player that's going to be preparing yourself for the NBA and then have some success on the college level. You can look at top picks from Rutgers. Rutgers was, I believe, 15-15 this year, and you got 2 top 5 picks on your roster with Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey. But that shows you that having that talent and allowing them to play doesn't necessarily translate to wins. So it's something that you really have to be good at understanding your recruiting and then being able to get it to come together. And John Shire and Duke has done that. And I look for them to reload in this upcoming year.
Yeah, it's going to be intriguing to see because, like you said, we tied with 2004 as the last time we had this many seniors off the board in the second round. So a lot of guys are going to be sticking around now, but you still may have some of those headaches with the elite players, McDonald's All-Americans like yourself coming in and still being gone. How do you view the best menu, the best recipe for roster success in college basketball right now? We've seen Coach Pitino say no high school kids, none. And I guess also, Richard, when you answer that question, how much does it depend on how high level of a guy or guys, plural, can you get?
I will start right there with the age. If you want to be good, get older guys. This is something that you've seen in other levels of college basketball for years. Division II, even junior college, you've seen teams that are able to get older players. And when you have an older roster, it allows you to have this experience and toughness to compete against younger players. I think the days of what you saw with Coach Cal in Kentucky and going and recruiting the one-and-dones and being successful, I think that's over with. You got to utilize the portal, get some really good players with some experience. But if you have the roster and the budget, as far as if you have to do a really good job of making your evaluations of who you're going to get. And I think that helps with having a system and a way that you're going to play, because when you only have players on campus for a couple of months before you can get going, the time of trying to build something through some continuity and some offenses that rely on you having to teach for a couple of months and sit there and learn is over. So you got to get the pieces that you need and probably get some older players that can contribute immediately and then go from there.
Richard Hendricks joining us on the Higginbotham Hotline. All right, what I love more than almost anything with any draft is when they conclude and we immediately turn the page and give our way too soon thoughts on next year. Is there a guys that you're already looking forward to seeing maybe where they come off the board, who they end up with, what they're going to be as it pertains to next year's NBA draft. Which, by the way, I will say for you, much more difficult than football. Like, you got to look at these European guys. You got to look at G League guys. You got to look at high school guys that might not go play in college and take a year off. Like, some of this is – baseball has it harder than anybody because we have no idea what some of these kids are out there doing in high school. They're going to go top 5 overall. We've never seen or heard their names. But you have a very difficult task even to be able to project some of what we should be looking at for next year.
Oh, and to touch on baseball, I think baseball has it right. I think in the situation where you have so many undrafted players and players that are in situations where it's not the best for them to succeed professionally, to get a phone call and not have the draft be such a big show for everyone to see, to get a phone call and have a choice if you want to go to college or stay in school or whatever it may be and select that option that they give you, I think gives the player a little bit more player movement and leverage. They have a little bit now with making the decision to go back to college. But as a player that's been drafted and entered early, when the draft is over, every person has a decision that they say in their head or a mentality to say, did I go too early? Did I make the right choice? Because you have no option. The team that picks you is what it is, and it's over. But to say who's going to get to go early, I look at A.J. DeBonsa at BYU. You talk about record level NIL money that he has to go there. He has a great skill set, 6'9", 7-foot wingspan. He can play on the perimeter. He's a big-time athlete. I look and see what he can do. Darren Peterson going to Kansas. Another Cam Boozer, Carlos Boozer's son, is a very coveted player as well. So it's going to be between those three on the top of the board moving towards the next year.
It's fun to watch. Is there a guy with in-state, maybe Alabama, Auburn, I don't know, UAB, that you think, all right, I can look forward to seeing them, and they're going to be a fun watch as it pertains to the NBA draft next year?
I think it's way too early. Just like it's way too early to talk about who's going to be the top pick, I think it's way too early to see who one of those teams has that's a bona fide player. I think one thing that is good in this era now, you go back to like Dalton Connect at Tennessee. When you have players who come and transfer in and people don't know them in the system, you have time to go and make an impression on the NBA or organizations. So you're going to have to see some dark horse, I think, within the state to see what they're going to do as far as the draft is concerned. I think Tahad Pettiford would have to be the front runner, and LeBaron Fallon, just with those guys returning after taking their name out of the draft with consideration.
Richard, I was going to ask you, after watching the draft, seeing sort of who went where, did Pettiford make the right call coming back?
Well, it depends on how much money he got. I mean, it's just that simple. If he got paid well in the NIL market, then it's worth it. But I look at it from a standpoint of the professional ranks. You want to capitalize on this college market that they have now. But the goal is to play professional basketball and to play as long as you possibly can. And if you have a window to be able to take advantage of that, I think if that's what you want to do, and if it's your personality and it matches, you need to take advantage of the window of opportunity to get drafted, because it's a window that opens very quickly and it closes very quickly. And then, knowing that the NBA wants to take younger guys, the older you get, then the less likely it is for you to get drafted. And I'm telling you, it's a legacy that every player wants to have, to say that they were an NBA draft pick, particularly a first-round NBA draft pick. And if you find yourself undrafted, then it's a tough pill to swallow for the rest of your life.
Absolutely. Richard, great stuff, man. Thanks for helping us recap the NBA draft. Always good catching up with you, getting your thoughts on things. We'll do it again soon.
Appreciate it. Hey, I got one more thing for you, Cole, too. These Achilles injuries, I think if they start calling travels and foot pivots the way they need to, that stuff will cut down. I never saw a postman who's pivoting on the low box tearing Achilles. I think they get back to officiating the game the way it used to, you'll see a lot of these injuries subside.
All right, hold on. We'll take us further into that. And for folks that don't know, there have been a rare amount of Achilles injuries in the NBA the last couple of years. There's been a massive increase in them. What do you think is responsible? And by the way, maybe the best Instagram post I've seen in the last few years, somebody said yesterday, the NBA is going to interject AI to research some of these new Achilles injuries, and it had a picture of Allen Iverson holding an X-ray. I just thought that was amazing, by the way. But what is the reason that some of this is happening, in your opinion, and what can they do?
I mean, listen, everybody tries to look at it as the pace of play. They want to blame it on the shoes, that a lot of players are electing to wear these low-cut shoes now, and that the game now has far more possessions and pace. But to me, as a player who has just recently retired, I guess within the last 4 or 5 years, and you watch some of the older players that are still playing and dominating, LeBron James, even Steph Curry, a lot of the shifty moves that you see these young players make. I mean, you see it all the time in drill settings. They're dribbling 15, 20 times a possession. Everything's a step back. It's a cut this way. It's a Euro that way. This single leg movement, it's a hop, step, slide, skip here. And a lot of it is travels, quite frankly. When you're training and playing in this way over and over and over and over again from the age of 9 all the way to 20-something, this is a lot of strain you're putting on your lower body. And when you put your foot in the ground and you have to just pivot the way that it was without dragging your foot, without these extra steps, and the officiating plays a little bit of a role in that. I think it could play a little bit of a factor in how much pressure is put in these lower extremities and the injuries that you see. These tears that you're seeing as far as Achilles are happening to younger players. Now, I get it. As a guy, like I retired, I was 34 years old. I get it when you see a 34-year-old popping something, or even when you're playing in rec basketball after you haven't played in a while. But this is happening to young players. I think it's a lot of change of direction that's taking place at a young age, which is putting stress on it. And some of these moves are celebrated, and they're quite frankly travels. And if you go back to calling some of this stuff at a younger age and how it should be and how it was, then I don't think you'll see a lot of those injuries. And throw it in the post every so often too.
There you go. Thanks, Richard. Appreciate the time, man. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, guys.
Richard Hendricks joining us there on the Higham Hoffman hotline. Back to close it up right after this. Oh, we're going to keep going? We're going to skip that break? All right. Interesting thoughts there on Richard. I will say one of the more, I don't know if it's intriguing, interesting, wild things about the NBA, and he brought it up there, is the low-top shoes that the guys wear. I don't know how they don't roll their ankle all the time. All the time. And maybe because they're doing it from a younger age, that your ankle strengthened up to the point that it doesn't, you're able to manage it and handle it. But you see these dudes playing above the rim in low tops. Okay. Don't understand how. And how you mitigate Achilles injuries by something with the rules of the game and how you change things, alter things. Yeah, how are you going to change pace of play in the NBA? Call more fouls? You don't want games to be longer, I promise.
Now, somebody brought up a point. It's like these guys that are playing now, they've been playing for so long with AAU and stuff and all
high
these
level
so
long, yeah.
Yeah, like they're just overworking their bodies to an extent, and now you're kind of having to suffer with this.
What you get then?
Yeah, like rest.
But your body can only take so much. Some guys are blessed, like LeBron. Different guys can just do it longer. You know, like Jerry Rice, even with multiple ACLs, could just do it longer and still play at a high level. A lot of guys' bodies break down. Trust me, I know. Physically, I was am now. Rough shape. Appreciate Richard Hendricks joining us. Dan Hope joined us. Ari Wasserman joined us to talk a lot of things around college basketball, the NBA draft, college football, Alabama, Ohio State, teams that we're looking at saying, maybe paid more attention to them. Maybe keep them a little bit further at bay when you're talking about winning a national championship, doing different things, whatever that is. Hope you have a great weekend. We're back Monday, 7 to 10 a.m. Talk some college football, keep you updated on recruiting, everything that's happening. 3-Man Front comes at you next right here on Jox 94.5.